2025 school board meeting to order. Agenda item 1A, we have public access to meetings. This meeting is open for public attendance. You may also watch the meeting remotely via our live stream. Agenda item 2, we have meeting opening and roll call. Nicole, can you please call roll and verification of quorum?
Ms. Bushman.
Here.
Mr. Robbie is excused. Mr. Kowalski.
Here.
Mr. Pope.
Here.
Ms. Portzen.
Here.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
Mr. Shader.
Here.
Mr. Summers.
Here.
Mr. Lepak.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Nicole. Agenda item 3, Pledge of Allegiance. If we could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to agenda item 4, we have the Mandana Bliss Award, the award presentation. The Mandana Bliss Award is a symbol of our deep appreciation for the unwavering commitment and outstanding efforts demonstrated by our staff members for educational excellence in the Stevens Point School District. It's named in honor of Mandana Hale Bliss, Stevens Point's first school teacher and trailblazer, whose exceptional service and dedication continue to inspire us all. This award lends us the opportunity to shine a light on a remarkable contribution made to this district by our staff and recognize their exemplary service. So I am going to be handing this off to Corey to share the award.
So at this time, I would like to have 6th grade student Tacey Votberg come forward with 5th grade teacher from McKinley Elementary School, Robert King. She's going to say a few words about Robert.
Hello there, my name is Tacey Votberg and I'm a 6th grader at McKinley. I'd like to begin with thanking everyone here for letting me have a chance to speak today, as I find it a true honor. When choosing a staff from McKinley, I realized how hard it was going to be, as all the staff are extraordinary in many different ways. But this person really stood out to me in every way that didn't stand out in any of the other staff members. And his name is Mr. King. I had just moved from Appleton last year, and I had no idea what to expect. But once I met Mr. King, I realized how lucky I was to be able to say that he was my teacher, as he showed me the greatness that McKinley provides. He led me and my classmates through the battle of the math test, whether we were victorious or not in our scores. And if we had questions, he'd be there, helping us sharpen our skills. He shows what I believe should be shown in every teacher across the world. I believe that Mr. King has made me a better person, not only grade-wise, but a better person myself, which is the reason why I'm so thankful to be part of McKinley. He's taught me to have self-confidence, which is the reason why I'm able to stand here today with the confidence that I have never had before. He's also taught me to be myself and never change for others so I appear as someone I am not. I cannot fully explain in words with the full credit that Mr. King deserves, but that is why I nominate Mr. King. Thank you.
I'm good.
Okay, we're going to go and take a picture, and then I'm going to have you go around, and the board members would like to shake each of your hands.
Great presentation. Well done.
Thank you for all you do.
Congratulations.
Incredible job. Wow, so
Hey, you
impressive.
memorized that?
Congratulations, Rob.
Amazing.
Well
Great
deserved.
job. Congratulations. Thank you.
See you.
Good job. Congratulations.
Rob, thanks.
That was impressive. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you. Congratulations. Now,
Before they leave, I just want to mention Rob, former SPASH wrestler.
I was wondering, Dave King, yes.
What were he finished, like 2000, he was, what were you at state?
fourth.
Fourth at state?
Wow.
Congratulations, Robert. Nice job, Tacey. Thank you very much.
Very impressive. Thank you, Tacey. Congratulations, Robert. All right, moving on to the next agenda item. We have public comments, agenda item 5. Nicole, did we receive any emailed comments or anyone sign up for public comment?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, presentations. We have 6A, Student Senate Representative Report with Kylie.
Good evening, school board members. I hope you have had a wonderful 2025 year so far, as we have all celebrated a happy holiday season with friends and family. Looking back on the 2024 school year, we have had lots of fun times at SPASH. Sporting events with big wins, homecoming dances and dress-up days, and so much more. Recently, in the last quarter at SPASH, we have had new exciting events happening. Our winter sports have gone into full swing. Boys basketball is 7-5 with a good start to their season, and their top scorer, senior Grant Shawnenaw, with the game tomorrow night against Wisconsin Rapids here at home. I'm sure they would love to see many faces of community to support them. Girls basketball is 10-3 with their top scorer, sophomore Jada Soybert. The girls also play Rapids tomorrow, although they are playing in Wisconsin Rapids. The boys wrestling team has had a good season as well. They have a match on Thursday against Rapids. This is their parents' night, honoring their parental figures in their life who have assisted them in their wrestling careers. 2 of our sports teams at SPASH, boys swimming and boys hockey, are currently undefeated on their season and are looking to continue to build this season undefeated throughout the rest of their season. Girls hockey has also had a wonderful season and are hoping to win their game tonight in Wapaka. Girls gymnastics is doing well in their season. They have had their 4th meet tonight as we speak at home against Wisconsin Rapids. Good luck, girls. Lastly, on the sports front, we have 2 cross-country coaches, Kevin Hopp and Don Banky, who have been named cross-country coaches of the year from the Wisconsin Cross-Country Coaches Associations. Congratulations, Mr. Hopp and Mr. Banky. As the semester has been finishing up with 2 weeks left, many of the students and teachers are in a frenzy to get ready for the new semester and activities to come during and before this, such as the annual elective showcase that will be held at SPASH on Wednesday afternoon and evening from 4:30 to 6 p.m. This event is run by SPASH elective teachers and so many more students, and it is designed to give incoming students to give a look at what SPASH electives have to offer for them. Students and parents will be able to meet and tour the FACS, Tech Ed, Art, World Language, and Music classrooms, and also meet the teachers and students. This event has grown each of the past 5 years, and we are hoping to see another great turnout for this year. On the fine arts side of SPASH, the students' one-act play is coming up at the end of this month. This with both shows on Friday, January 31st and Saturday, February 1st at 7 p.m. in the SPASH Auditorium. And they hope to see many community faces there. Overall, we have had a very exciting semester at SPASH, and we cannot wait to see what second semester brings for the rest of us Panthers. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a rest of your Monday evening.
Thank you, Kylie.
Kylie.
All right, moving on to agenda item 6B, we have our communication report with Sarah O'Donnell.
Hello. All right, taking a peek at communications for December. Media coverage and public relations in general was a little bit lighter as we were working to get those websites ready to go and off the ground, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. We were able to get a piece into the school news for Wisconsin, which is some nice state coverage for the mini golf course event that is totally slipping my mind, the actual name of it, but just a really phenomenal opportunity to highlight really the cross-curricular collaboration that those teachers have demonstrated and how they have really engaged students in that learning process. I know many of you are very familiar with that project. It just continues to grow every year. So really excited to have that receive some state recognition. And then we also, I did not get it into this report, but wanted to mention Corey did a Monday morning with Mike. If you're a member of the Portage County Business Council, you may be familiar. He sends just kind of a video every Monday highlighting a business or something happening in the community. And we asked to do one right around when school was starting, just to give a nice little update. And we were the #1 viewed Monday mornings with Mike for the year. So we were really excited just to have that engagement on another platform. Looking at social media engagement for the month, we had small growth in both audience for Facebook and Instagram, slight decreases in impressions and engagement. If you'll remember, in November, we had that video go quite large of the students saluting with the National Guard folks at Washington. So we were competing with that for the month of December. And then just wanted to highlight our most engaged post was a video that we put together with Mrs. Cubs and Mrs. Vanderloop over at McKinley, just highlighting kind of how they are really working, together to co-teach in a classroom and doing some really great things for kids. All right, websites, that was the big project. So we are launched and live, very excited about that. We had a really successful launch, very minimal, if any kind of tweaks. Technology was a big support of making sure that that happened, taking care of everything kind of on the way back end, just kind of redirecting some of those pieces that needed to go where they needed to go. Over the course of since we've last launched, we've seen increased user engagement. We have a form on there so folks can really tell us, you know, we like this, we don't like that, I can't find this link, how do I get to my district email? So we had 58 form submits. In those first 2 weeks, we saw an initial increase in site visits of 25%, and we saw longer average session times. I'm guessing because people were trying to see kind of where their new stuff was. So we'll continue to monitor those analytics, but I don't expect them to really kind of level out for another couple of months. We did offer support to over 40 requests that came in directly to communications. I'm sure there were some that came into technology that were just managed by technology that we didn't even see. We offered 3 trainings ahead of time along with those 56 individual trainings, so I felt like our content managers and web managers were really well prepared to go ahead with that launch and have not received feedback stating otherwise. So really very happy with the launch, happy with the feedback. I continue to tell folks, you know, let us know if something isn't in a spot that you think, right? Like when we went through and we did the deep dive, we certainly tried to align things with how we were seeing people use the different sites. But websites are never really complete. They're just kind of always a work in progress. So we're happy to continue to receive that feedback. And we're really glad that that's done. Looking ahead this month, continuing to offer support and really looking to how we optimize those new websites. So paying very close attention to where are people getting stuck as they're moving through that site. Are we getting increased requests to find a certain link? Or just, you know, in general, like email would be the one I would use. You know, we had a number of staff members just message and say, hey, I can't find, like, I don't know how to log into email, which it never occurred to me that people weren't just kind of like putting that in their web browser. So really easy fix on our end, and it made it easier to use for staff. So we'll continue to do those sorts of fixes. Preparation for mid-year updates. We are almost at semester, so we're working on our mid-year update to the community, just letting them know, you know, what we're working on, how first semester went, where those referendum dollars are being spent, just kind of all of those nice mid-year highlights. So I anticipate that being ready to go mid-February in a number of ways, and then just continuing to, you know, promoting strategic communication across all our channels as we typically do. I believe that is it for me.
Any questions for Sarah, comments?
I just want to comment, Sarah, you've been the communications director for how many years now?
Well, I think I'm in my 13th year.
13th year. Yeah. And I just remember coming in about 10 years ago with it, and the website was rudimentary. It was fundamentally distributed throughout the district with a lot of kind of
It's a
huge,
beast.
It's a beast. And, you know, I mean, I don't know website design other than I know how fundamentally complicated it is. And so just the track that you and administration have had us on over the course of all of these years to come to this place where we now have everybody on the same page with their own pages is pretty amazing. So
Yeah, we have,
thank you for all the behind the scenes work that
thank you.
had to happen.
I will just throw out tomorrow's basketball games are a doubleheader at Spash. So if you are really craving some basketball, there is girls and boys at Spash.
Awesome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hashtag basketball mom. Thank you, Sarah. All right, let's move on to agenda item 6C. We have our superintendent's report with Corey Hirschbrenner.
Sure. So a few things to mention. We did have some additional donations given to our schools within the last month. Tom Newton has verbally suggested that he might be interested in donating up to $50,000 for playground equipment at McDill. Then we did have a grant that was written and donations from the Olson and Willis family to put $30,000 worth of treadmills at Spash. And then Rick and Sharon Lee have donated a piano to our music department. So thank you once again to our community that continues to provide us with donations that are very much appreciated. Just a reminder, semester 1 ends on January 24th. We do have the student art show that's taking place on January 30th from 4:30 to 6:30 here at Bliss. And thank you to Barb, Will, and Jen who have volunteered to help out with that art show. State Education Convention is coming up next week. So we've got Jen, G, Ted, and Meg that will be making the trip to Milwaukee. Portage County Business Council dinner, if you're not going to be in Milwaukee, if you're interested in participating in that dinner, it's on Thursday the 23rd at 5:30 at the Holiday Inn. Please let Nicole know ASAP because she has to get you registered by Wednesday. Then school board candidates who have expressed an interest in being on the ballot this spring, in the order in which they will appear on the ballot are Jen Bushman, Christina Smith, Barb Portson, Jeremy Liebrick, Miguel Campos, and Marty Mercer. So we will not need a primary. Had we received one more, we would have had a primary. So congratulations and good luck to all of those individuals. And then a couple other things I just wanted to mention. I was going to say congratulations to Don Banky and Kevin Hopp as well for winning the Coach of the Year award. In addition, Kevin Hopp did receive another award. I don't know exactly what it's called, but I think it's a national award of the year. So I'll bring that back at the next meeting. So congratulations to Don and Kevin for a phenomenal job with cross country. And then next, G has a couple legal updates.
Yeah, before I do that, Don received the National Cross Country Coach of the Year award years ago, like 10, 12 years ago, for high school.
Great
coach.
program.
Yeah, there's only one of those given a year.
Yep.
Incredible. All right, two things right now, and everything's in the courts. So state legislature and the DPR are duking it out over who has the power to pick the reading programs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is what I got from it. That we have to put in by next year, right? Beginning next year?
For reimbursement?
No, just to start, that it has to be in and going next year.
So there is no requirement in the legislation that requires districts to adopt a new resource. We just happen to be in our curriculum cycle at a point where we would adopt. So there will be districts in the state that won't adopt any of those on the approved list, but they are in the process. They did just add an additional resource recently. They added HMH, and they're evaluating the potential addition of a resource called UFly as well.
Well, it seems the legislature and the DPI are fighting over control of what's on that list. It'll probably end up in a higher court somewhere. And at risk is the $50 million that the legislature has allotted to this, which they haven't given out yet. The second thing happened, this was just Friday, a federal judge in Kentucky ruled the modifications to the Title IX programs, and the language, we just voted on something about that a while ago, ruled those unconstitutional. And of course, that's like everything else headed to the Supreme Court also. So those are the two things I had.
Thank you,
you.
G.
Great. Thanks, G.
Okay. Is that it? Yep. Okay. All right, moving on to agenda item 6B. We have a facilities utilization study proposal. Mark Roffers.
Yep, so I'll say a few words and then I'll have Mark Roffers and Nick Johnson come up. So in alignment with the goals that the board established for me, there was one goal that asked us to begin the process of looking at enrollment trends, programming within our buildings, and boundaries and projections. So we want that work to proceed. So I'm going to recommend a proposal tonight that we start that work with the support of a firm called MD Roffers. They've worked with a multitude of different school districts across the state. They also work with many municipalities. So really experts in the field that we just do not have the capacity to do internally or the knowledge or expertise to do. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mark Roffers and Nick Johnson.
Thank you, Corey. I'm Mark, and that's Nick.
Hi, Mark and Nick.
Nice to meet you. We're 2/3 of MD Roffers. The other third is my wife, who's at home with our kids tonight. So we're going to present a little bit about what we have in store or in mind for you to project enrollment for your district here. And Corey gave us a good sneak preview of who we are. We are, in fact, by training, urban planners. We've continue to practice urban planning, working for municipalities throughout the state. I worked for the town of Hull for a couple years very recently on planning issues as well. Our practice for some time has evolved to include school district work. For school districts, we project enrollment. We help with attendance area boundaries and adjustments and the factors that might go into those. We have prepared and assisted on long-range facility plans for districts and strategic planning work. Our enrollment projections are based on an innovative approach that we've developed over the course of many years. It's been well tested. We can talk a little bit about that. And the bottom line is it's anything but looking at the past 10 years and then just drawing the straight line going forward. And I think that's what you'll learn from our presentation here tonight. So some of the questions we hope we can help you answer is what's the expected pace of housing development and demographic change in the community, and how might that impact enrollment? We know we have in the village of Plover housing unit growth coming. We have redevelopment projects, mostly for multiple family in different parts of the district. What's that going to mean for new students? We also know that if we only look at that new housing growth, we're missing a huge part of the picture, because we're not then looking at neighborhoods that have been here for many years and how they're changing and evolving in student generation. So with that knowledge, we would project student enrollment for your district for what we call the long term, through the year 2040, with a couple of interim periods within. We do that for your current grade groups. We do that, as Nick will explain, for some variations, that potential scenarios that the district may want to look at for adjustments. And we'll do that for each of the school buildings within your district. So it's not just a grade group projection or a district-wide projection. We'll help answer what parts of your district you might expect to have increasing or decreasing enrollment. We know you have some schools that are pushing up against the limits of capacity and others with excess capacity. So it's important to obviously understand where the enrollment change is going to happen, not just how much. Working with you and getting capacity numbers from you, the magic happens when we project how many kids we expect in school A versus how many kids can fit in that school, given the number of classrooms, your class size policies, and other factors. And then once we get to the end of this process, I think there'll be definitely some aha moments as to what might come next after projecting enrollment along the lines of what Corey introduced the project with. How we do it, again, our approach is very thorough. It certainly refers to recent trends in demographic change and housing growth, but really we're future focused. We're interested more in understanding what's going to happen 2 years from now, 5 years from now in new housing growth, where the trends are in birth rates, which impact how many kids you'll have 5 years from now in your district. There's a lot of number crunching involved. He's the primary cruncher. A lot of opinion that we've developed over the years in working with school districts and also municipalities, and understanding and separating the real from the hype, which is all very important when you're thinking about new development. And we do that through a combination of that in-house work and also work directly in the field here in the community. You'll see us driving, or you may not see us, but we'll be driving around counting vacant lots. We'll be talking with planners from Stevens Point, Plover, administrators from the other communities within your district to understand growth and development. We'll connect with residential real estate professionals and others, and Nick will explain more about it. Long and the short of it, it takes us about 4 or 5 months from start to finish to work our way through this process. And it'll finish with a very detailed report and a presentation that we would come back to share with you at the end of the process. Turn it over to Nick. He's going to drive for a little while here.
Great. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to go through several slides that kind of just go through what our process looks like to give you a very high-level overview of the work that will take us 4 to 5 months to complete. So first is we divide the district into neighborhoods. So these are basically small puzzle pieces for us to divide your very large, expansive 450 square mile school district into much smaller puzzle pieces for us to perform our analyses on and our projections on. We estimate it would be about 85 or so neighborhoods. This image that you see here on the slide to the right is an example of how we divided the La Crosse School District that we just worked with last year. This is zoomed in to the city of La Crosse, how we divided their district up. Those neighborhood factors are based on attendance areas, residential subdivisions, municipal boundaries, urban growth areas, so where the city of Stevens Point, where the village of Plover anticipates growing over the next 5-10 years or so. Also based on other major geographic barriers like major roads, rivers, or railroads. Then we analyze demographic trends, specifically looking at recent births. That's one of the main demographic pieces of information we look at. This is an example that you see to the right. The graph there shows births in the school district of La Crosse from 2000 to 2023, so over about a 23-year period or so. We can see that births in the first half of that graph, so from about 2000 to 2010, were very stable. But then there was a pretty significant decrease in the number of children being born in that school district, which really did translate into enrollment decreases that that district saw. We also look at reproductive age population. So this is an age cohort that we specifically zoom in on, the population age 25 to 44. So where exactly that population lives within the district, and then also looking at recent trends as to if that population is increasing or decreasing, as that is a population that's going to be producing your future students over the next few years. We also look at household sizes as well as racial and ethnicity mix within the community. We then look at housing conditions and trends in the district. We look at recent home sales, so home sales over the past 5 years within the district. That indicates where housing is turning over. So greater areas of home sales means greater numbers of new families, which could indicate future enrollment increases. That's also tied with housing age, also household turnover from older generations to younger generations. We also look at housing suitability, so looking at the physical characteristics of housing within neighborhoods. If they're larger, if they tend to have more bedrooms, typically translates into more students for the school district. And then we also look at local and regional housing market trends, specifically those trends in the city of Stevens Point, the village of Plover, and the towns, and how they compare and contrast against one another. We then analyze community growth and change. Mark had referenced this in his introduction to our work, but this is where we meet with the city of Stevens Point planner and the village of Plover planner to understand their local plans, understand their zoning, understand any major transportation or utility projects that will be opening up areas for development that currently are not developable. We'll also meet with real estate professionals, get their take on the local housing market, who's buying homes, who's moving here, and then meet with major residential developers that are developing housing within the community, where they're developing it, what they're developing, which areas of land they have their eyes set on next. Then with all of that information, we project housing unit growth. We do that for our 4 projection periods, 2027, 2030, 2035, 2040. We also break our housing unit projections down by types of housing, with the understanding that single-family homes generate a lot more students than do new apartments. And then we're able to aggregate our housing projections by current school, as well as for the district as a whole. So we know that elementary school A will have 1,000 new housing units, B might only have 100 new housing units by 2040. Then with all of that demographic information that I discussed, as well as the housing information, characteristics of existing housing and new housing development, we're able to project our student enrollment change. So we look at our student per housing unit ratios. That's just a very fancy way of saying how the housing within a neighborhood is generating students for the school district. We do that with all that demographic and housing information. That results in our resident enrollment projections for each grade group, as well as each of those 85 neighborhoods or so. For our 4 projection periods, we can also tweak or add on to those projections to add an open enrollment in students, if that's a significant factor here. Projections will then be provided for each elementary school, each junior high school, the senior high school, any charter or virtual schools that are operating in the district, as well as for the district as a whole. We also can prepare individual grade projections for grade 4K, grade 6, and grade 9. That will facilitate the potential exploration in the future of potential grade group shifts. This table that you see here is an export from our school district of La Crosse projections, showing our enrollment projections through 2040 for the 9 current elementary schools operating in La Crosse. We create these graphs, which are also a great visual representation as to how we project enrollment changing at each of the schools within the district. The 2 leftmost graphs, the one in the left and the center, are 2 elementary schools from the school district of La Crosse, where we projected stable enrollment in Emerson Elementary School, and then slightly decreasing enrollment at Hinchin Elementary. The furthest right graph, Country View enrollment, that was from the Verona area school district. So that's outside of Madison. That attendance area of that elementary school is experiencing significant amounts of new housing development. So we projected increasing enrollment there. We then wrap all of our work up into a very likely 80 or 90 page report. The example from Wauwatosa is shown there on the left side of the screen. And then we're also able to distill all of that into a presentation to provide to you all as well. This is our proposed project task overview. I really went through a lot of what each of those steps are over the past few slides, but task 1 through 8 are what is shown in our scope of work. So how might this be useful? So we have a few slides showing some examples from other school districts that we've recently worked in. All of this projections information and housing projections information can be really useful for identifying potential scenarios, directions, or next steps that the district can take in its school facility or attendance area planning efforts. So for example, in Wauwatosa, that's the map shown on the right-hand side of the screen there, our projections showed an imbalance among their elementary schools, with a couple operating just at or above capacity, and others operating well below capacity. So we worked with a citizen-led task force to use those projections to analyze different school consolidation options. They also had 9 elementary schools. We looked at different consolidation options to parse that down, but they went a completely different direction to add 6th graders into their elementary schools. So we had the attendance area shifts that were, the grade group shifts that were there, and then adding those 6th graders into the elementary schools, we also had to perform some attendance area shifts, which the puzzle pieces were able to be moved and shifted between different schools to see how that would change the projections for each of the elementary schools. In the school district of La Crosse, which we worked with last year, our projections were applied to pending elementary schools using a later approved referendum that ended up passing in November to where 3 elementary schools were closed and 1 new elementary school was built in its place. So they went from 9 elementary schools to 7 elementary schools. Using those neighborhoods, those little puzzle pieces, we were able to tell them that yes, your projections if with the approved referendum, there would still be room in all of your 7 new elementary schools for projected students. And then last example here, in Sun Prairie, another district just outside of Madison. We've worked with them a few times, and through those few different iterations of projections, we've been able to help them determine that 2 new elementary schools should be built based on the grade 5 K-5 enrollment increases that we projected for them. And then based on where we projected those new elementary school students to come from, that was able to help them understand where exactly their 2 new schools should be built. They also built a second high school, so we were able to realign some of the attendance areas to balance the 2 new high schools that would be operating and create that new high school boundary that did not exist previously. They also had a grade group, a different grade grouping structure with 6 and 7 students in middle school, 8 and 9th grade students in an upper middle school, and then 10, 11, 12 in a high school. So our projections were also able to help them understand when exactly they could shift back to a 5 K-5, 6 to 8, and 9 through 12 grade group model.
So in all of these options, the projections that we worked on were one ingredient of several to help a school district decide where to go next with its facilities, with its programming. You know, other factors we certainly are involved in consulting with, but they include the conditions of your schools. They include transportation issues and busing, school district educational policy. Some buildings are better suited to educate kids in the year 2025 than others. All those factors kind of get thrown into a mix after our work is done to figure out what are the next best steps and what direction a district might take with its facilities, its attendance areas, and sort of what to do and what the value of these projections are. We don't know where the projections will go for your district right now. We don't know where it'll point to, but I'm sure there'll be an aha or two and some new ideas that come out of the work that, if you're willing, we'd be doing for you. Thank you very much. We're happy to answer questions.
Jim?
Yeah, so I can appreciate the presentation showing us your projections for other schools. Do you have any schools you've done previous that you have a history on that you can say this is how accurate we've been?
Nick's just explored that yesterday, and he's going to share some information.
Yeah, so every year I look at which school districts we did a projection for that academic year. So DPI just released the data for the 2023 to 24 academic year. So last year I was looking at the 11 school districts that we did a 2023 projection for. Those projections occurred through the late 2010s to probably about 2020. So anywhere from a 3 to 5 or 6 year projection. In the average of the 11 schools, we were about 2% off.
And constantly learning. You know, we try to understand not just how much off we were, but why. And so that the next district we work for benefits from that experience. And the more we work for the district and the more we get comfortable, the more we hone in. And so we've been hired serially. Sun Prairie is one example, but there are others of districts where, you know, frankly, it just helps to get in there and to understand the nuances of a district. We'll learn as much as we can in the 4 months we're here, but our accuracy certainly improves with experience.
Other questions?
What are we going to be asked to do tonight about this?
So I would like the board to give us permission to move forward to utilize MD Roffers. It comes at a cost of $39,000, and the way that we have determined we would pay for that is we have money budgeted for unfilled positions at about $42,000 to date. So we would take that budgeted money that we unfortunately have not been able to spend because we can't find people to fill those positions, and we would utilize that to pay for MD Roffers, since we originally didn't budget for it at the beginning of the year.
Just reallocating.
Yep.
the- yeah.
So it's budget neutral.
It would be budget neutral.
Other questions?
Can we
I'm
make,
fully supportive, but does that take into account sub-pay?
It does.
Okay.
Beth did a nice, analyzation of that.
can we make comments?
Absolutely.
Not just questions?
Sure.
After I read through this, I mean, I'm sure your company is very valuable, you're expansive in your results, and very helpful. But I'm wondering, is this based on the fact that we need to redistrict our schools?
We don't know that yet. This
Well,
information,
we do know that. I mean, our school, we have two schools that are overcrowded, some that are underutilized. And I guess what I'm getting at is, I feel that if we're gonna move kids around, that we know how to do that. We have the expertise to do that in our district. We don't have the expertise to go as far as you're going with your company, if that's our goal. But I think, just personally, I think this is generated from the fact that we're overcrowded at a couple of schools and underutilized at other schools. We can do that.
right now, we don't have the ability to project that long-term. I don't feel comfortable redistricting the district based on what we know right now, rather than what we may know 10, 15, 20 years from now. I would hate to make that significant of a change and disrupt families who have maybe been to a school for many, many years with lots of children in their families, if it's not going to be that way for a long time.
So the benefit, in my mind, would be, I guess, the implication of not doing that thorough analysis is, to Corey's point, we redistrict because we don't have the deep expertise, that objective kind of data to look and project forward. We may have to redistrict again. So having this data would allow us to be more planful, to say, okay, longer term, this is what strategically makes sense for our families with the most minimal amount of disruption.
I think it's really important for us to take that forward look on numbers. And I think we all have heard over the last couple of years, you know, we're looking at our outgoing classes at SPASH, and we're looking at our incoming classes in our kindergarten, in our 4Ks. And there's discrepancy there. I mean, this is not a phenomenon just for Stevens Point. It is fundamentally statewide, it's fundamentally nationwide. And as a board member, I would feel fundamentally more comfortable making decisions about our schools and our boundary lines, and about where incoming neighborhoods are going to be transporting kids with this background data and information than not. And I think it's a fairly small amount of money, frankly, and it's cost neutral to the budget. And I think in the long run, all of us are going to feel, and the community is going to feel supportive of decisions we're making, because they'll be data-based.
Gives us a much more informed perspective.
It is.
Correct. In making those
But
decisions.
I think obviously I'm not in favor of doing this. I think our focus can be narrowed to getting some schools uncrowded and putting kids in a more equitable setting. We know how to do that. Now, obviously you guys are far more, you go a lot more into things and give us a forecast of the school enrollment, but I mean, school enrollment's going down, slow but sure. We know that. Yeah, and besides that, and I told you I would mention this, I don't like the way we would pay for it, because these are supposed to be our employees, and we need, maybe I'm kicking a dead horse here or something, but I'm still thinking we can find them somewhere. I don't know how.
But that's
I
just
know
And we're going to
that's
continue.
just to date.
Right.
So that's money that we would have spent on salaries already. So it's not money that we could be spending on
Right.
future
We'll keep them
salaries.
posted,
right.
and we'll continue to try to fill them. Right.
The dollars from the unfilled.
Yep. Just to date.
Yes, Ted.
I agree with you, G. I think we know that enrollment is declining across the state, and some places are going up and some places are going down. This is a financial tool that will allow us to choose better. And I would,
And I think it's with the student and families in mind, right at the center, because we want to ensure if we're moving our families and we're moving our students, that we can say this is going to be a long-term decision versus having to then move again because we didn't forecast.
I think of the last time we moved kids around, was probably like 30 years ago, moved districts. My kids were involved in that, and that's a long time ago.
Actually, we just did,
With the junior highs.
we did with the
With the
junior
junior
highs.
highs.
Yeah, we did
Okay.
a kind of.
The Kennedy
The
students.
Kennedy students.
But we didn't need to have and again, I'm saying, you guys go way far into this. Just to do what we need to do, we have the people who can do it on our staff. To redraw lines, to say we want this many kids here, this many kids here, and we know in which direction our town is moving. And we know which schools are gonna be increasing and which ones aren't. We know that already.
Will?
Well, I think like the question is, we know that, for example, Jefferson is underpopulated right now, and we know that Plover Whiting is overpopulated right now, but are they going to be overpopulated in 15 years?
I don't
Like,
know.
I don't have the skill set.
And
to make
does
that
it make
decision.
strategic sense for us to look at revisiting the junior highs and
Yeah.
right with that sixth grade moving
Grade
into
configuration.
to
Yes.
make it a true middle school and then right SPASH having 9 through 12. So this data will help us have all those kind of strategic conversations, very fact based.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to result in redistricting.
Absolutely.
Right? So we wouldn't necessarily have to move
Yep.
attendance zones or realign them. It could potentially be
Sure.
looking at grade configurations, and that might allow us to utilize our facilities more effectively.
And we don't want to say that some neighborhood's going to be going to Plover Whiting and have families, for if they want to go there, move into that neighborhood to have their kids go there, and then 5 years later we say, actually, never mind, you're going to go to this
get to
district.
go there.
It's really difficult on families when
It's
you do
very-
that. It's hard on kids and it's hard on families, and it's something they never forget.
And it was even with the junior high move, right? It was very it's a very personal decision. So
And I think if we can make decisions based on data, it's going to make it a better decision.
I think it also allows us to make decisions looking forward versus making decisions just based on what happened with the last year or two. If, for example, we've added some 4Ks
Yep.
in a couple of our elementaries because there was the ability to do that. But our ability to be able to project kind of that moving forward district-wide and facility specific facility, I think it's just going to provide us and our community with a lot of really good information.
Agreed.
Okay.
Is this something that has to be done tonight?
I am going to move to approve the $39,000 proposal from MD Roffers Consulting to conduct community growth and enrollment projections with funding sourced from budget savings due to unfilled positions.
motion made by Will.
I believe, I asked a
Second.
question.
Right, so second by
before that.
Ted, second by
Can I-
Ted.
Can
so-
I get an answer to my question before we do that?
You can open it up for
Yep,
questions
open it,
now.
Open it up for questions.
We have
and
a first
comments.
and a
Is this
second.
something that has to be done tonight?
Doesn't necessarily have to happen tonight. I would prefer that we do because I know that they are getting new clients. And if we want to get moving on this and potentially have something by August or September, we're going to have to make a decision tonight.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Nick.
Look forward to working
Thank
with
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 6E, we have the Boys and Girls Club programming overview with Chris Nyman and Danielle Belsky.
Thanks, Jen. At this point, I'd invite Danielle to come up to the podium, and Danielle was able to join us at our Ed Services Committee meeting, and she was able to provide us an overview of the partnerships that we as a district have with the Boys and Girls Club, and I will pass it over to her to go ahead and provide the full board with that overview.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Danielle.
Oh, thanks for having me on this cold Monday. I'm happy to get out and bundle up my coat to be here tonight. But I am Danielle Belsky. I am the CEO for the Boys and Girls Club. I have been with the club since 2009 and recently become CEO this past July. So very exciting, but been working with the Stevens Point School District since I was first hired. So.
Great.
Oh.
You should just be able to advance to there you go.
Oh, there we go. Our history, we are a relatively young Boys and Girls Club. We first started out in 2002 and have quickly grown through our 22 years. Our first site, I always love to tell everyone, was at Kennedy Elementary. We opened our doors at Kennedy and then our teen center, which was downtown. Through all of the years, you can see by our timeline that we have grown. We built our Burrard Center in 2015, expanded to the Rochwold School District that same year. We are now then renovated our Plover Center, which is now our Sherrill Center, and we have 10 club sites across Portage County and many alternative programs, which I'll talk about tonight. So our club sites, I'll skip that. That was just a video, but I'm going to highlight our club sites. As mentioned, we are a Boys and Girls Club Portage County. We are a county-wide organization, and we are operating club sites in Junction City, Allen-Bancroft, Rochwold, and we also do an Amherst summer program. That's something that I love about our organization is how we are also serving every child across the county. Through our programs, though, in our traditional after-school programs, it's a time for kids to get their homework done. It's a safe, fun environment for them to do that. If Boys and Girls Club wasn't there or other after-school programs that we have, where would those kids go? So this is a time where the kids are able to get their homework done. We feed them. We don't like hangry kids at the club. So immediately when they get in, they get a hot meal or they get a snack and a juice. But then they're also doing some of our high yield learning activities, which is Triple Play, which is our fancy gym games. Club Creates, which is more of our art programming. We have visiting artists come into our facilities and do programming with them. We do hands-on. We'll also do some drama in the summer as well. STEAM, Cooking Club, Social Recreation, and Filmmakers Club. Filmmakers Club is specific to, it started at our Jefferson Elementary School site, and this is something that many of the kids have been enjoying. We have a staff who is a videographer, went through the Stevens Point School District and is working for us and has done probably over 100 videos of kids doing various activities and silly things at the club. And next we're going to be exploring into even comics, where kids will be making their own comics and we'll be going live with those as well. So I mentioned that our traditional after-school programs, but one thing that many people don't know about our organization is our Guided Pathways to Success programs, which is more of our alternative programs where kids are referred to these programs. So our Gateway Report Center is an alternative to out-of-home placement for high-risk youth. Programming includes mentoring, academic support, life skills, community service. These are kids where it is more important for them to be with us than to be in their home environment. And this is done through the court system, and they are referred to them. They're usually in that program for 6 to 8 months, and it's on a point system. And every night that they're with us, they sit down and they have a homemade meal and a family-style meal where they have positive mentors with them. J.R. Wynn, if you're not familiar with him, he's an amazing person and started this program in 2007. But many successful kids have gone through this program. Our other one is our Guided Pathways to Success Mentoring and Truancy program. So this is one done in partnership with the Stevens Point School District. We have a graduation specialist or a student success specialist at each of your junior highs and SPASH, a full-time Boys and Girls Club employee dedicated to mentoring kids who are needing it the most. These kids are mostly not on track to graduate on time and are needing additional supports, and so they pull them out from their study halls. Sometimes we work with the teachers if need be, if there's a homework assignment or a project that they're needing to focus on rather than being in class. But this is a time where they are getting that one-on-one mentoring support. Our truancy program is also in conjunction with the school district, is where kids will go to truancy court, and then our truancy specialist will also work with them on having them come to our homework center, putting other sanctions on them so we can get those kids back in the classroom. Our Youth Enrichment Services Center is an alternative to in-school suspension. The programming includes academic support, social worker involvement through the county, counseling, life skills, and other services through various partners. This one is also done with the Stevens Point School District. It's been successful for the past 5 years, and we just renewed our grants. We're excited to get that up and going. Again, we had to put a little pause until we could make sure we got the money in the bank, which we do now. So very excited about that. But that is something that we work very closely with Ben Franklin, PJ, SPASH, and to get those kids to our programming and then make sure that they're not missing too much of their school day as well. The other program is our Youth Force Workforce Development Program. This is involving youth and workforce readiness programming, such as junior staff, which is 14 to 16-year-olds, come to us for their first job, and they also have mentoring mentors in the summer. We go through soft skills, how to build a resume, how to do a nice firm handshake with them, right? Everything that we want in our workforce today. So we're helping get them that first step. We also do a variety of career camps. We have done aviation with them, precision. We've gone and visited precision last, I believe it was. Then also, we recently are working with Midstate, and we're going to each of their campuses over the next 6 months and touring what are their programs that they offer as well. Then job search and placement, and then employer visits as well. Our Delta Dental Smile Club is something that we're very unique for. We have an actual dental clinic inside our Burrard Center. So it has a full dental chair, it has the x-ray machine right in there. And so when kids become members of our, right in that membership application, it asks, when was the last time they saw a dentist? We compare that with whether they're on the free or reduced lunch program, and we try to develop who are those families that are just not getting the access to dental care that they need. And so through partnership with Delta Dental of Wisconsin, they have a full-time hygienist who comes and does part-time work at the club, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then full days in summer. And she does all of their cleaning, and then we have volunteer dentists who come in and then do the screening and the check with them. About 300 kids or so are going through that program, but it is very popular and very widely known, so excited to have that. Not many boys and girls clubs have a dental clinic inside their facility, except the one in your town here, Portage County, and I'm very proud of it. So that is something unique and exciting about our organization. Just a high level from our organizational chart, who we are. The slide that I always like to focus on is our next slide, which is all of the staff that we have dedicated to our sites. So we are located at your Madison Elementary School, Jefferson Elementary School, McKinley Elementary, and then we also have our Plover and our Burrard Center. No matter what school the children attend in the Stevens Point area school districts and the parochial schools, they have access to a Boys and Girls Club. And we provide full-time staff at those club sites to support, to make sure that we are providing that high-class after-school environment where it's a safe and fun place for those kids to belong. I want to just highlight, even tonight, we had Marshfield School District. We are looking to expand into the Marshfield area, and we had the superintendent and 3 principals come over, and they met at our Jefferson Elementary. They were able to meet with the principal, Chase, Molly Demro, and they were able to tour our school-based locations because they're wanting a school-based location that we're hoping to open of June 1, but they're looking to Stevens Point School District on how do we best implement this, because they're wanting what we have. And it's amazing to show the connection that Principal Demro and Principal Chase talked about, how we bridge that after school, that communication between school day and after school programming. So neat moment today. Our guided pathways to success, as I mentioned, JR Wynn, he's been with our organization since 2007. But then we also have a variety of our student success specialists, Linda Hall, Alex Frederick, Cynthia Brundage, most of which are all familiar with the Stevens Point School District as well. So our impact in 2023, I'm sorry, I haven't updated it for 2024 yet, but as mentioned, we have those 10 club sites across Portage County. Majority of the youth we're serving, about 80%, is that 6 to 12-year-old population. But a big 20% is that teen population, junior high and older. We have 185 Smile Club kids that are doing some of those programmings, but then on top of that, with that toothbrushing, that's where we're getting about that 300. 983 hours of homework dedication. We do our, just kind of highlighting some of them. 81,289 meals are served to kids. Between our snacks and our meals, summer meal program, our after-school program, it's something to just attest to that we're making sure that every belly's full when they come into the club, and so they can have that productive, fun time with us. Our mission statement at the Boys and Girls Club is to inspire and empower our youth to realize their full potential. And we want to provide that world-class club experience that assures success is within reach of every young person we serve, which is really shown in how we're a county-wide organization and how many other Boys and Girls Clubs come to look to us and see how are we best implementing an after-school program in some of our alternative programs so they can also bring that success to their neighboring clubs. We have a Youth for Unity mission statement. We are committed to fostering an inclusive and equitable culture for all of our youth, families, and staff. And our values at the club. Our values are fun. We want to create that positive after-school environment. I think I've talked about that a little bit. Making sure that we're inclusive, we're responsive. During COVID, that was one of the times that we really showed our value of responsiveness. When everything was shut down, we then helped and worked with the school district even in providing those to-go meals. And then we also did at-home kits for families to take. And so we recognize that, hey, we're not able to open our doors, but what can we do with the resources that we have in our in our buildings? And that was part of doing those meal programs as well. Providing that safe environment in our after-school programs, we provide 1 staff to 15 kids ratio. So no matter what club site you're looking at, they're always within that safe ratio, which is actually lower than what our Boys and Girls Club of America recommends. So they recommend a 1 to 20, and we strive for 1 to 15. We're also trustworthy. We have many community partnerships, including yourself as a school district, and with our donors and our stakeholders. That's something that we value, and we want to have a trusting relationship with everyone. I'm going to skip that. But what I really wanted to just highlight is our partnerships. As mentioned, since I even was hired in 2009, I've worked at our Madison Summer Extension, which is on Johns Drive, a low-income housing complex. That's where we first opened our doors. But then when I moved out to Kennedy and recognized how the school connection and how they're there to support our kids and our families in that after-school environment, that connection between our partnership has just grown tremendously through the years. So I did talk about our YES program already, our truancy abatement, our mentoring programs. We're providing full-time staff in your schools to help support the kids. The last 3 to 4 years, we had worked with the school district to get ESSER funding, which was ARPA funds that were come down. And with that, we were able to do some extra fun stuff and hire teachers during our summertime to provide small group or one-to-one reading to prevent that summer learning loss with the kids. All of the teachers that we hired were school district teachers, and then they also provided guidance because we hired a couple university students who were elementary ed majors. So those teachers were able to support them, which is a very nice experience. We coordinated very well over the last years and in this school year or this summer, just on what summer schools are you operating? How does Boys and Girls Club help with that? So through the years when Madison was shut down for summer school and another club site was open, we relocated our services with it so we could provide that after summer school support for those families. Just in connection with our school-based club sites about in how we're operating. Madison, we just opened. We wrote a grant with the Stevens Point School District, a 21st Century CLC grant, which helped the sustainability from our loss of that ESSER funding, which we got, which was $1.5 million over the next 5 years. with that, we were able to open that Madison site, which we're already seeing about 40 kids after school every day. Very exciting. We were hooting and hollering when we heard that one, right, Chris?
We were.
Who was hooting and who was hollering?
I think I was hollering.
I was hooting. But very exciting, some of the partnerships that we have had through the years. And then anytime we can, we're always trying to leverage our relationships with the principals and the teachers. And when we have kids that are just needing that extra support at the end of a long day, we can also, the teachers provide and principals provide much guidance to our staff on different behavior management tools that we can use with the kids. So that has been something very valuable. Our college-age staff, we hire over about 100 college-age staff through the year, and through the staff that are working at school-based locations, to have that teacher, that principal be there to just give those management tips is huge. You can't teach those types of behavior management tricks like in your UWSP or your graduating classes. So we give a lot of those students hands-on experience. So I kind of rambled through that a little bit fast, but I would love to open up for questions, or if Chris, you would want to add anything too.
No, I would just thank you. I appreciate the ability to be able to inform the board and the community, anyone that happens to be joining, on just how valuable this partnership is with the district. And to your point, we have worked over the years to continue to enhance what we currently offer, and we're just really grateful. We're really grateful for the working relationship, so thanks.
Thank you for being easy to work with, Chris.
Jim?
I know it came up at Ed Service, and you mentioned it briefly tonight, and I know either you or perhaps Meg can answer this one. It occurred to me as you brought up the expansion of Boys and Girls Club to Marshfield, and a fair amount of the funding comes from local business and United Way. How is that one funded, and is Portage County money going to Wood County, or do you have funding sources over there?
We have funding sources in the Marshfield area.
Excellent.
So all of those funding is, we are not tapping our current donor base or our businesses in the Stevens Point area. They are actually going into $1 million operational campaign right now to get 2 years of funding so they can get their Marshfield sites up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question.
And actually, you presented to the United Way,
The school board,
and United Way.
that one's coming up, yeah.
We have we're making a request as well. So we also, the Rosholt community provides this year, how much did they raise in the fundraiser?
Oh my, I think it was close to $30,000.
Close to over, I think,
For
over
Taste of
$30,000 with a fundraiser to support specific summer programming. So yes, but in particular with Marshfield, Boys and Girls Club is looking to have that community funded.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to note it's just amazing. Even with our school days, if we look, we call a school day and Boys and Girls Club opens. And it's just something I think we as a community take for granted. And then you start working with a community like Marshfield where they don't have aftercare for kids and they don't have summer school, not expansive, and they don't have a lot of options. And so I think it's a wonderful partnership.
And Danielle, if there's a family that's interested that is currently not a member, who do they contact?
They can go right to our website, and there is an online membership portal where they can go. One thing I didn't point out is our membership fee structure. So one determining factor is if they are on the free or reduced price lunch program. If they are, they pay $10 for the entire school year, no matter how many days they attend, how little they attend. Families who are not a part of that meal program, we ask them to pay $110 for the entire school year, no matter how many days they attend. That same fee structure applies to summer programming as well, whether it's $10 or $110. In our summer programming, we're open from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So 10 hours of full programming for kids to keep them busy at a very affordable price. So every kid has access to a club. There's no barriers for them to attend.
Is that self-reported free and reduced lunch, or is that information from the district?
Self-reported.
All right, any other questions? If not, Or Ted, did you have one?
Thank you for your presentation and thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you. It really is thank you. I was excited when Chris called and said, "Hey, can you present at the school board meeting?" I'm like, "Yes," because I just want to say thank you. You guys are amazing to work with. I truly admit it. So thank you for doing what you guys do.
Thanks,
All right,
Danielle.
wonderful. Thanks,
Thank you,
Danielle.
Danielle.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 7, the consent agenda. This includes the minutes from the prior school board meeting on December 9th, 2024, the approval of the scheduled monthly bills, and employment recommendations. I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? No, we'll go roll call vote. Could we please have a roll call vote due to the scheduled monthly bills?
Ms. Bushman,
Yes.
Mr. Kolsky,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Mr. Shader,
Yes.
Mr. Summers,
Yes.
Mr. Lepak.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, business services. We have 8A, the 23-24 annual financial audit report. And I'm going to have
Mr. Kurtz.
Yep, you're going to have me. Well, it's that time of year again. It's the time to go over the financial audit, and this is from 2023-24. It's a little hard to say 23-24 right now because I'm working on budget 25-26. But that's where we are. Our audit it went really smoothly. I thought it was a really good audit. We had CLA, Clifton Larson Allen, did the audit. And Amber Danielski, who's here today to present it, was on the lead of the audit, and she has been for a number of years. Amber's been great to work with. She's there during the school year, whether we're in the audit or not. If I have questions where I really need an opinion from an auditor, I just reach out to her. She gets back to me right away. So without any further ado, I guess I'm going to call Amber up here to give her presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I know on the agenda there was both the financial statements for the full district and also the charter school. I'm going to focus just on the overall district part. So I'm going to go through a variety of pages in the bound document, but then just if you have questions, just let me know. So for the 2023-24 audit, if you go just past the table of contents, there's the audit opinion letter, which is about 3 pages long and has lots of mumbo jumbo kind of things about what standards we audit under and all kinds of more of accounting language. But I'll just start at the very top on page 1, there's these opinions paragraphs. And it states in the second paragraph there that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information. So in layman's terms, this is a clean audit opinion. We didn't find anything that was materially misstated that would have led us to have to modify our opinion and put 5 or 6 more paragraphs in here saying something was materially wrong that didn't get fixed or just was overall materially wrong that couldn't be fixed kind of thing. It's what the district strives for every year, and it's the same type of opinion that we've had as long as I have been on the audit. For our audit procedures, we do a risk-based audit. We talk to Mike, we talk to Tom, we talk to a variety of different people throughout the district to understand what went on during the year. You know, was there new debt? Was there lots of capital projects? Was there just a lot of ESSER money being spent? Whatever it is. And from there, we determine where we're going to spend our time and look at revenues and expenses from that perspective. Sometimes we might test 25 receipts. Sometimes we might test 40 receipts. We might test 60 payroll. It varies every year depending on how and what is going on at the district. And so all of that accumulates into what that opinion said there for being an unmodified opinion. Moving then to the balance sheet, so the numbers that you're interested in, if you want to go to page 15. This is your balance sheet, so your assets and liabilities as of June 30th, 2024. And I'm going to start in the middle and mainly focus on your general fund, because that's obviously your main operating funds. For financial statement purposes, this combines Fund 10 and 27, because there's a couple different rules from what DPI wants versus what accounting rules have to be. So when I talk about general fund, it's both of those two combined. So there was $31.9 million in total assets, $20.5 million in cash and investments, $10 million in taxes receivable that ultimately came in August of 24. And then you also have some due from other governments. That's going to be your ESSER receivables, grant receivables, that kind of stuff coming in from the state. So that's what adds up to being your total $31 million of assets. On the liability side, you had just under $14 million in total liabilities. Just about $11 million of that is this accrued and other current liabilities line. That line is going to be your summer payroll for the teachers that were paid out in July and August, but for the prior year. And then it's going to be related health insurance and all those related benefits that get paid out right along with those paychecks during the year. Then the net difference of those two amounts is your fund balance. So at the end of the year, the district had fund balance of $17.9 million in the general fund. And there's different categories in the accounting rules for what makes up fund balance. The first category there is non-spendable. This is when the district has basically prepaid expenses for the next year. So depending on when property insurance gets paid, if it crosses years, that's what kind of amounts are going to be in there. Or if you have some inventory on hand that isn't going to be used and gets expensed in the next year. Or you go to a conference, you paid for it in June, but you don't go to it till September. That kind of stuff is what's in that non-spendable. It's basically spoken for, and that's why you can't spend it even though it's in fund balance. The next category is restricted. This is when a third party, whether it's DPI, anybody else at the state, a donor, or somebody outside the district, gives you funds and says you can only spend it on X, Y, and Z. And so this is like the amount that's left over at year end, because you might have gotten that money 2 years ago, you might have gotten that money this year, and then but you haven't spent it all yet, so then it's going to be used going forward. Committed fund balance comes when the board makes a motion or a resolution that says they want to set aside funds for a specific project. So this $510,000, the majority of this, if not all of it, is for the playground project that was for the elementary schools that was committed 2 or 3 years ago. And as those funds either get interest income added to it or as they spend, that fund will go up and down until either all the funds are spent or the district decides we're gonna not do that project anymore and they do another motion to eliminate it, kind of thing. The remaining category is your unassigned fund balance. So one way to look at this is your cash flow. This is the funds that are available to spend for unanticipated expenditures that might have popped up now in 24, 25 that you didn't know about when you were doing the budget, or just to help for cash flow purposes, so maybe you don't have to take out a line of credit to kind of keep making the debt payments as they come along or keep making payroll payments. I understand the district may have done that now in 24, 25, but that all happens depending on how your cash flows come in. Because again, as the district knows, you don't get all your tax revenue until way late, or you don't get all your equalized revenue until way late. So you have to have some fund balance there to help you offset that. Your policy says that you want to have 20% of the next year's expenditures. This amount here was at actually 13.2%. So it did decrease in the 23-24 year. Any questions about the general fund's balance sheet? If not, then I'll briefly just mention that the next column over is your long-term capital improvements. This is that Fund 46. These are the amounts that are correlated that the district transfers into periodically that then is supposed to be spent on projects in that 10-year long-term capital improvement plan that you update every couple of years. And as those projects happen, you can spend that money. DPI says it can only be spent if that project's listed in that plan, but using these funds. So you have just about $6.1 million in that fund for future capital improvements. The other governmental funds, that's the combination of your food service fund, your community service fund, your donations fund. They all just are a little bit smaller funds from an audit perspective, so they get added up into one big column. And so all those funds put together, you have $6.4 million. Your debt service funds are in there as well, and those are, all your smaller funds that will have activities going forward. Moving then to page 17, this is your 17 and 18. These are your revenues and expenses for the year. So again, focusing on the general fund, you had $103 million for total revenues. $64 million came from the state. Then you had $5.4 million that was federal grant. So that's that line will have your ESSER funds in there, along with other federal grants that would have come in for Fund 10 or 27. And then you had $29.2 million in total property taxes. So those are obviously your main categories for revenues, things that we would expect to see from a district. Nothing unusual there. Obviously, the federal sources is probably a little high because of spending down the ESSER money in 23, 24. So going forward, that probably will decrease. For your expenditures, obviously the majority is in instruction and support services. There is some principal and interest there. That's for leases and that kind of stuff, for leasing copiers and different types of things along those lines. And overall, there was just about $109 million in total expenses. So overall, your expenses were higher than your revenues by, if you look on page 18, overall, after you've had some transfers in and some revenue coming in for new bus purchases and selling some old buses, you decreased your fund balance $5.1 million. And so then that also is kind of what contributed to why that unassigned fund balance fell down below that, what your policy is. Any questions on that? If not, then the only other thing I wanted to go over, and this is something we've gone over every year, if you go all the way back to page 77, we only had one audit finding this year. It was this finding we've talked about before, but out of this whole 80-page document, the auditors are responsible for filling out 10 pages of it. The rest of it is management's responsibility to prepare. But for cost-benefit purposes, the district hires us to prepare it. Every single school district I audit has us prepare it. Every single municipality or county that I work on has us prepare it. So it's not unusual, but it is important. It's part of the reasons I do like to come and do these presentations, so you guys can ask questions on these reports. Mike and Tom look through them and ask questions before they sign off on it and before we print and bind and mail all these out. But it's just something to be aware of, because obviously you're here on the day-to-day, so you know what really stands out if something looks weird when we print these reports or as you're looking through the drafts. And so that's where the board review of all this stuff does become important. And again, it's not unusual. We see it a lot in the state of Wisconsin, but it's still something we just want to point out so that way you are aware. And with that, I'll open it up to any other questions.
Questions or comments? Okay, so with that, we are looking for a motion to accept the 23-24 annual financial report.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second by Meg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Do we want to go over the pods?
Since you have to take action on that, any highlights from pods?
No, there was no change, or there was nothing really different. The reason PODS even has a report is 2 years ago, it was awarded a grant by DPI, and DPI requires a special audit. 24-25 will be the last year that PODS has to have this specialty audit, unless they get another new grant kind of thing that would require it. Basically, we look and do a sample of testing of expenses and payroll and just make sure that they, really where PODS employees go to there kind of thing. And the one thing that's just a little weird, I guess I would say, but it happens for every charter school, is if the grant itself buys a piece of equipment, it only gets reported in the PODS report. It does not get reported in the main audit report, and that's DPI's role.
Okay.
So I don't think there's a lot of equipment, maybe $5,000. I know there was equipment the prior year, but that's like the one unique thing, but that's the way DPI's rule went.
So then we are looking for a motion to accept the 23-24 annual financial report for PODS.
So moved.
Motion by Will,
Second.
second by Ted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you
so
very
much.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item 10A, we have our Educational Services Committee report with our Chair, G. Pope.
Okay, we already had the presentation from Danielle Belsky, which we also had at our Education Services meeting. And then we had two other things, a presentation from John Waldorf, who will be here again tonight to repeat that, about the proposed ELA course name changes. And then we had a a very quick summary of the open enrollment space determination for the next year by Jen McMahon, but I think you're gonna expand on that today, so they're gonna be covered here in the next few presentations.
Great. Okay. Thanks, G. I think at this point, we'll lead with the programming shifts that are being proposed at SPASH. So at this point in the ELA department, I'd invite Jeff Milsna and John Vollendorf to come up to the podium. And Jeff will provide us with a little bit of background on those programming shifts. And John will conclude by summarizing the proposed changes.
So kind of where I wanted to be able to start for the board was just kind of connect this to the work Chris and I do at the district level. So one of our first projects that we did when we came in is we reevaluated our adoption process, because one of the things we were hearing loud and clear from our teachers was they weren't getting the funds that they needed every year to be able to adopt curriculum. So we made that adjustment. So every year now we have a different group that's going through a curriculum adoption process. We work closely with building leadership. Some of the adoptions are K through 12. Some of the adoptions are just secondary. So our English team up at SPASH, our secondary group, was in their curriculum adoption, the first year of their implementation this year. And as we work through the process at SPASH, what we identified in this process is we asked this group to really look at the course offerings that they have, the enrollment in those courses, because we want to make sure that we're providing our students with a standards-aligned learning experience. So in that process, we really identified 2 programming shifts that we wanted to be able to make. And John Vollendorf is going to talk to this group about what those shifts are going to be. I think one of the things that was important for me as we talk about the work we're doing with Hanover, they came in and did shared some information with us. This work is really closely aligned to that and really validates the work that this group is doing. So I'm going to have John kind of talk to this group about those programming shifts up at SPASH.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Good to see you again. Thanks for having us tonight. As Jeff mentioned, one of the things that we were charged with this year as an English department team was to look closely at our course offerings in the context of this curriculum review cycle, specifically in the number of offerings in that junior, senior level, which is where there's the most number of different classes. Before I talk about the shifts, though, I want to immediately say thank you to all of the teachers who've worked really hard on this, specifically Kari Witt, our English department IL, and all of our English teachers. This has been a lot of meetings, some really good discussions, some contested discussions, but it's a positive experience. So as Jeff alluded to, there's 2 things that we're proposing. And we were with you last month for course name changes, but we waited on these because there was a little bit more going on in English that we wanted to do, and it just seemed to fit here a little bit better. So the first one was, we're really excited to be able to say that working with our teachers, we're going to be able to offer speech as a dual enrollment class moving forward. So any SPASH student who takes that at SPASH will have the opportunity, free of charge, starting next year, to earn that class as a dual enrollment class. Secondly, as we looked carefully at our offerings and as we kind of thought long and hard about what we can do to increase our rigor, things like that, there was a real obvious thing that stood out. And one of the things that I did to help the department was I closely looked at enrollment data from the past 5 years. And what we discovered very quickly was that the majority of our juniors were enrolling in classes that were designed to be electives. And there's nothing wrong with these classes. These are standards-based classes that certainly belong in a comprehensive curriculum. But what we quickly were able to deduce from that process was that when it comes to fidelity and things like rigor and ensuring that we're doing whatever we can to prepare our students, that we were really spreading them thin across this. And knowing that 70 to 80% of our students go on to 2 or 4 year colleges, that led us to a really good conversation about what do we really want our students to enroll in and take. So along with the course name changes, the second shift that we want to make moving forward, starting next year, so obviously this isn't going to impact our seniors or our juniors who are enrolled this year, is we're going to narrow down those options. And we're not eliminating any courses. We're not changing any curriculum here, but we want every student to leave SPASH to be able to say, yeah, I had one of these classes as a junior in writing. I had one of these classes in literature, which is what our academic guide has said going on certainly as long as I've been there now. And that's been longer than I sometimes want to admit. So and by the way, when we look closely at that course enrollment data, those elective courses to which I was referring were creative writing and literature and film. Great classes, but if you think about that, we could have a student matriculate through their sophomore year, which is English 10, and then get to that senior year, and they may not have been asked to write a 5-paragraph essay and look closely at things like thesis statements. So the other shift is that we're going to ask all of our juniors to select between one of 2 writing classes. And taking the feedback from last week's committee meeting, went back to the English team, and we would like to call that class Composition and Research, right? Simply put, we got rid of the word college in there, which was certainly a point of conversation. That was formally Advanced Composition. We wanted to get away from that word advanced there because, again, we want to encourage as many possible students to take that class. The other class is going to be called Foundations of Writing. And unlike the spectrum of classes to which I previously referred, although these 2 classes are going to be different, although there's going to be different types of papers in them, there's going to be some common essential standards in there so that, again, we can ensure that any junior is getting some of those similar experiences. And then when it comes to the literature choices, again, we want to streamline that down into 3 choices instead of, if you look at last year's academic guide, it's just a long list. And even as a former English teacher at SPASH, I kind of did a double take when I looked at it and said, geez, where we're really at right now? So we wanted to make it easier for students, certainly for parents, as they're trying to select courses to do so. And so you can see some of those 2 other new names. We want to change modern literature to the art of the short story. And choice literature is the new name for exploring literature, which was a class designed as an elective credit for students who are simply looking to fill out their lit credit. So those are the 2 shifts and the name changes that we're asking for your approval tonight.
Can you run through that again? I didn't see choice literature. Is that one of the choices?
That's a name change, G.
Oh, way down there. Okay.
I have
Sorry.
a question on the senior grade 12 classes that are offered. So if they take comp and research as a senior, then they can take foundations of writing. Is that way it's offered?
They could, correct. Yeah, all that we did there, Alex, is we said, it doesn't happen a lot, but we do get some students who, they go through their junior year, they take things, and then they get to their senior year, and hey, you know what, can I take that class too? Doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes it does. And also the other kind of sometimes exception is when we have students transfer in, depending on the school from where they're, where they came from, depending on what that curriculum looked like, sometimes we have to kind of adjust to meet them where they need to be.
And we talked about this at the committee meeting a little bit. The difference in rigor, we focused in on the 2 writing courses. There's significant difference in the rigor of those 2 courses.
The difference in rigor comes from the type of paper and sometimes from the pacing and other things like that. So again, the whole purpose in the shift is to, instead of have students going down 4 or 5 different roads to complete that writing class, it's 2 roads.
What about the literature class?
The literature classes, and you have to go into the...
Can I stop because I want to specify the question, John? Are any of these courses harder than others or easier than others?
Some will be, absolutely. And if you look at our academic guide and read through, American literature is your traditional, the content and some of the reading levels with some of the assigned text in there will be higher. Yep.
I think one of our concerns, and Meg expressed that also, is that, the propensity for students to say to their counselor which one is easier. And in going around to the Martin Machining, Point Precision, our trips there, and there were students there that were apprentices that traditionally may not be thinking about college. You know, let me get out, let me get some experience working and stuff like that. But I think students that are the ones that are not college bound, are not projecting themselves to be college bound, they need the things offered in, I would guess, the more difficult classes as much as any of the other people. I mean, all the things I saw at Martin Machining and Point Precision is you gotta talk to people, you have to write, and you have to read writing by somebody else, and you have to know how to communicate in jobs that may not involve a college environment, or you may want to go on to more training later on. And that was our concern, is that the courses that are, quote, easier, that people may be guiding them into these courses because they're saying, well, if you're not going on to school, take this, it'll be all right. And we didn't want to see the difference in rigor so much.
Well, and that's one of the things, G, quite frankly, that we're hoping that this helps, because right now, with more choices than we have there,
More variance.
that's exactly what happens. So, and you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter where you're going, what you're doing. We want to challenge every student. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're applying at Quick Trip. You're going to have to read. You're going to have to write. What these courses do is what we hope they've always done, and what we hope we can even keep doing a little bit better, is give students a few different options to reach some of those endpoints.
I think one of the goals I'd personally like to see, and maybe some other people would too, is when the student says which one of these is easier, that the guidance counselor says that's not the right question. They're different. One might be more for you than the other, but their rigor is the same. You're going to be expected to do these things that we deem important for you as you move into our society.
English teachers talked a lot about that, because if you look at, for instance, the new name for modern literature, the art of the short story, that doesn't mean they're going to be reading less. It's going to mean that the core material in there may not be, the Scarlet Letter or some of those other things like that.
Can we say that, would it be fair to say that we're going to move towards making sure the answers to the question which course is easier is not the question?
That's never been the formal context for any of these things. It's always been a student relevant question, and quite frankly, sometimes a parent one. So that's where it's on us to make sure that we're doing what we can to talk about those expectations. Our English teachers, just like our math teachers and science teachers, work hard with students during that registration cycle to provide feedback on where they think and would recommend students enroll. And then we try to motivate them to do that.
So I talked at I think all of us have recognized that our test scores are not where we want them to be. And in particular, at SPASH, they're not. And I think it's having 4 children who are now adults. It's kind of normal for kids to maybe try to assess, all right, maybe it's an easier class, I can get a better grade. And I think there's pressure on kids these days to get better grades. But there's also, what is the course that you need to help you be successful with how you're moving forward? And I know with my kids, it was incredibly helpful for them to take classes at the high school level that prepared them for post-secondary. Because even if they were seeing the same material that first year of college, they were able to relate because it moves faster whether you're high school or college or tech, it moves faster. And so for me, again, as a board, I think what we've tried to say is we want to see our kids striving. And I think administration wants to see our kids striving. And I get it. I mean, I'm a part-time board member. That's easy for me to say. But so we're offering an option here, and one's easier and one's harder. And I think the big challenge for us as a district is how are we going to ensure that we are really focused on challenging those 80% of our kids who are, for sure, we know going on in school, that they're going to take that more rigorous writing class. Because I just think if a year or two down the road, we aren't seeing that. I mean, if we're seeing, I think you said the numbers are showing us that that's not happening, then how do we help make that happen? And I think part of it is that communication from our guidance team, from our administration, from our board, about, hey, if your kids are thinking of going on in school, this is what we're recommending.
Yes.
We really think your students should consider this, because they're capable of it. And we think it'll help them in the long run. And if you're not, if you're concerned about that, let's have that conversation. And if you're really concerned about it, let's figure out how to maybe support that less rigorous course.
So help me understand when we keep talking about rigor, how much variance is there between the classes? I mean, it sounds like there's concern that there's significant variance on rigor, but I also think there's the rigor component, and as a student, there's interest and aspiration, and what's aligned with your interest and aspiration is another component, right? Because when we know students are passionate or more interested in the content, they're going to be more interested in learning. So is there a significant variance?
There certainly can be, but again, the different spectrum of choices has always been kind of a staple of how we've done this. So the content and the format of the class speaks to that as well. Like, for example, when we're talking about the choice literature class or exploring literature, there's a big difference in some contexts of rigor when you're talking about having a student come in and saying, you get to pick 5 novels throughout the semester here, and we're gonna ask you to pick those based on the length of them, versus here's an assigned novel, I need you to read this, we're gonna talk about it in class, we're gonna write about it, things like that. So that's where some of that variance comes in.
I would just like to applaud the English department and leadership. I really feel like they're starting to address some of the issues that we've seen with our test scores. And I think this is just the first step.
Yeah.
This is most definitely something that we will revisit again in a year and will continue to revisit. And I think that offering what's being suggested here is going to take away some of the options for students to potentially take less rigorous classes, which our data supports. So I think the goal is to challenge all kids, to prepare them with the skills that they need to be successful no matter what they do when they leave us. And I thank John and the English department. They've done a phenomenal job. And we do have to take action on this tonight because John needs to get his course description book finalized tomorrow.
Right.
So John, I just want to say thanks to you and your team.
And to your point, condensing the offerings is one step in the right direction. So continuing to revisit is the next step.
Well, we've mentioned before, you had mentioned, we were talking about the DC Everest School District, that
The profile of a
what's their
graduate.
difference from us, because their scores are higher than ours. And you said they have a more prescribed curriculum. This is what you follow if you want to go here, and this is what you follow. if you wanna-
They have more defined pathways, right?
Traditionally, and you've been around a long, long, long time.
That was 4 longs.
In fact, I was here when you got here. So, but you know that Stevens Point has been celebrated by ourselves mostly for being for offering many choices. You know, and we were known, and parents have liked that, and they've said that many times. They appreciate that we offer many choices. So condensing courses is going to kind of the term kind of rubs me the wrong way, but the making all courses roughly equal in rigor, you know, is something that, and I think you kind of said that you're moving towards that, because we all said, hey, you better believe it happens in the counselor's office when the kid says, well, which one is easier? Happens all the time, and counselors have to do the dance.
Redirect.
Yeah, and it's different, but the kids know, they talk to each other. So it's up to teachers and you to make sure that that gap closes. That kid that's not going to mid-state or to college deserves us to give them the rigor they need to compete in the world. And so for the composition and research and the foundations of writing, I get the impression that foundations of writing is the easier of the two. I'm sorry to use that term, but we want to make sure that we're moving towards closing that gap so that you can say, no, they're truthfully say they're not, one's not easier than the other. You're going to do pretty much the same amount of work, but it's a little bit different experience.
Correct. Okay.
Okay? And we're all agreed, we're moving towards that, right? Sorry, Jim.
No, it's okay. Just a couple of things. Point on Everest, I think I got their English score here is 59.2. Stevens points is 58.8 at the high school. It's not exactly statistically significant. And to your point that we have, you know, rough 70 to 80% of kids going on, I come from a position of, and perspective of removing barriers for kids that really want to excel. And I mentioned some of this at the Ed Services meeting. Yes, the volume of offerings can be a positive, but it is also a negative, because when you look at how many offerings we have, and then we have these things like Start College Now, where a kid can go to Mid-State or Point, UWSP, and obtain a college credit, they aren't at this point allowed to do that unless they've completed every course. And I would like to see in our phase 2 at least revisit that and say, if you've met state requirements for English, you are eligible for that. Another is, and if the kid's excelling, they've completed 8th grade, allow them to take 9th grade English online in the summer coursework that is allowed. And so, again, not hold them back. Let them get ahead. Let them move forward. Remove that barrier to their expeditious passing through their educational life. Those are, I guess, things that I think in phase 2 could be reasonable. And I think, to your point, both Meg and G, I think that is part of the point of phase 2 is they're going to look at the rigor of all the courses and determine even whether or not some of them need to continue.
Yep, and some of that I'll talk a little bit more about when I give the overview of the course sequencing work that's occurring right now with Hanover. I too would just like to applaud John and the ELA team up at SPASH. I think they've done an incredible job. This really is kind of where we thought we would land ultimately with some of the research projects we've been doing with Hanover, and they've really got out in front of this and really taken the initiative to kind of begin to shift the culture, right? We're talking about some really small technical changes here, but we're also talking about changing the mindset in a culture. And that's the real adaptive change that I think takes time. So we think about changing the narrative in those spaces about you're all capable, we believe you can, and we won't let you fail, right? That's a cultural shift that will take time to happen, but we certainly have identified the need for that to happen, and I think we're taking some really positive steps in the right direction. So thank you for the work you've done.
Wonderful.
I move to approve the recommended
I was
English
gonna-
course name changes and revised junior course sequence as presented.
Second.
Questions, comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so let's now move into 11A. We have open enrollment space determination for the 25-26 school year with
Jenny's
Jenny
going to come
McMahon.
forward. Jenny will give us a short summary of This agenda item, which comes before you every January. The bottom line here is there's no changes from last school year, but with that, I'm gonna let Jenny give some highlights.
Thank you, Corey. Yep. Good to see all of you. Happy New Year with all of our fancy new tech. Yeah, I'm bringing forward our annual discussion about open enrollment numbers. So each year, our school boards get to sit down and decide, would we accept open enrollment applications? Open enrollment is a program in which families can ask to have their child attend our school district rather than the district where their home is, their physical home. So they might live in Marshfield, but they work in Stevens Point, so they'd really like to have their kids come with them each day, go to school here, and then go home at the end of the evening. Within open enrollment, we get to make two different decisions, one for students who are in general education programs, and then one for students who are in special education programs. All of you have heard me talk about how special education, our numbers continue to increase. So I certainly have a different recommendation for special ed and general ed, but also the same recommendation as I brought forward to you last year. So for open enrollment numbers, we always take a look at, our general capacity, which I feel like this board is always talking about, even just in this last discussion that we had, courses, class capacities. So I feel like we have a rolling information to help you make that decision. Overall, in general education, I would recommend to the board to keep our decision the same as you have in the past and for quite a long time, to have unlimited seats for students in general education programs, but then to have restricted numbers for students in special education programs. Specifically in our early childhood, all the way up to our high school programs, to have no spots in those programs. Our students and our teachers have high caseloads, and I want to make sure that they're able to teach our students that live right in our district. We do have two exceptions that I feel like we could offer some additional seats. One would be at PODS, our charter school. They do have a specific application process and kind of certain students that are able to access that type of programming. I feel like within our capacity, we could have one open enrolled student with an IEP or special education services. And then our final program would be Project Search. That's a program where students are learning job skills. It's a really exciting opportunity once you've completed that traditional high school diploma, but you're a student with a disability and really want to grow a lot of your employability skills with job coaching, career coaching, and some classroom instruction. Within that program, just looking at our enrollment trends over the years, I would like to recommend that we continue to offer 3 spots to students open enrolled through that program. We do have an assessment day and a whole process that allows us to make sure that any student that we would accept into Project Search from another district is ready for that program. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Any questions, comments for Jenny?
When we get a student through open enrollment, we get their money comes with them, right?
Not all of it, about 2/3 comes with and about 1/3 stays in the home district. Same when we have students from our district that go elsewhere.
I will motion to approve unlimited general education 4K seats and unlimited general education non-resident seats available under open enrollment for the 2025-2026 school year as presented.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
I still have a few.
Okay.
If that's all right. So we all know special ed is funded only at like 33% of its cost. So accepting special ed students, really, does that cost us money every time we accept one?
So this is
This is general
motion's
ed.
general ed.
No, we're talking
we're
about
general ed.
Project
No.
Search. And
We're talking about general ed.
Yeah, the
First
motion
one
we
is
made was
number
general.
one.
The next one's going to be special.
All right, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries.
Ask us questions?
I'll move approval of 0 multi-categorical all disability areas for early childhood programming, 0 multi-categorical all disability areas for grades K through 6 in person, 0 multi-categorical all disability areas for grades 7 to 12, Ben's, PJ, Spash, CFC in person, 1 multi-categorical all disability areas for PODS, and 3 multi-categorical all disability areas for Project Search available for the 2025-2026 school year as presented.
Motion made by Meg,
Second.
second by Will. Question?
Yeah, what's the cost shakeout on that when we take in students in our special ed program from other schools?
I feel like because we've made the decision to really limit that, it's been a very limited situation. So the situation where we most likely have that or have had that has been through our Project Search. And that program is already such a partnership between DVR and our district. So we would have our instructor, we would have our site, we would have our skills trainers, even if we had, the number of students that we have plus a few more. So that one, I don't feel like changes a lot of our financials as far as running Project Search or running that well. As far as pods, that one student, that would just be the only spot that we've had. I don't think we've filled it this year. So there wouldn't be a big change other than, what Corey said is it's not like we get the exact dollar for dollar, we get an amount. However, at pods, they go through an application and really have to be a good fit at that charter school. So we would be really making sure that we'd be bringing in a student who would thrive in that setting and do well in our programming.
Jim?
It's safe to say that, because special ed covers a broad number of areas and topics, that the costs related to that can be widely variable based on the student that comes. So
Absolutely.
I guess my thing would be, that's a hard question to answer directly because you don't know unless you know what exactly is the special ed situation you're dealing with on an individual student that's coming in. It could be anywhere from something very simple of behavior, or it could be hearing impaired where you've got to hire someone that can do sign.
Right. Absolutely.
It can be a very notable expense. And so, and warranted, but I guess if they're in our district, that's something we do. But if they're trying to come into our district, we have the ability to say, I'm sorry, we don't have the funds to support that.
Yes.
Is that reasonable?
Yeah, that's spot on, Jim. You got it. Yes, needs can really range from having speech and language only, probably would be our most mild need that might come in on an IEP, all the way to really in-depth complex medical needs or care needs, interpreters, full-day services, alternative programs. So again, restricting to our PODS charter school and that job training program through Project Search, there would really only be those 4 potential seats that I would recommend. And those are very specific programs for each student.
Other questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
Moving on to agenda item 13A, we have revisions to policies 8510 wellness and free and reduced lunch.
Yep, so Chris and I will take this. Neola, the company that the board decided to work with for updating our policies, has made some suggestions to our wellness policy and our free and reduced policy. Basically, these changes are just keeping us in line with legal compliance and requirements that we're obligated to do. So in your packet, you should have seen the red line deletions, and then the items that were in green were the additions that were made to those policies. So with that, Chris and I can answer questions that you may have, and then we'd be asking for the board to take action on these tonight.
I will move to approve the revision.
Jim has a question, sorry.
I had a couple of questions. One was, and it's related to the free and reduced price lunches. It isn't specific to the policy per se, except that I know it's been an issue that comes up numerous times. I know from talking to Mr. Owens that we, of course, do free lunch, and everyone that applies, of course, is accepted. But anybody who has reduced doesn't just have reduced, we actually cover their 100% fees as well. So there's no out-of-pocket for someone who's reduced price on lunches, correct? Are we still doing that?
Are you saying, so like in terms of course fees?
No, I'm saying for meals.
For meals.
So when you do, but kids at a certain economic level, if they qualify for free, of course they get free, but there's also the reduced where, because our meal program's running in the black, we use that to then fund that population as well. So the ones who are reduced lunch technically are free lunch as well. And so my question is, we tend to have this, that's what Mr. Owens told me.
Okay.
I'm a
I don't know that. I could not confirm that. I don't know, Corey, if you could, or
Mike,
if
was
Mike
that
could.
just for breakfast? I don't know if that was for lunch as well. That's what I thought as well.
Made it sound like it was the whole
I'll find that
full
out,
year.
Jim.
Because then I was wondering if that was the case, how do we get such a large balance of unpaid lunch fees if we're
Yeah.
already
Yeah. It's a
covering
valid
the
question, right?
reduced? So who is actually not paying for, I mean, I can understand certain circumstance, you may not qualify for it, and it can be life circumstance, but
Yep.
I just, or is it someone who's not doing the paperwork that they need to do to qualify, that they otherwise would qualify?
There are a lot of families that may qualify and don't fill out the paperwork for whatever reason. We have tried to encourage families to do that more, so that they don't get, in trouble with large account balances. And I feel like each year we do have more families fill that out, but we know that there are some people that just choose for whatever reason not to fill it out. But my understanding, Jim, was that was just for breakfast, but I'll get back to you on that.
That was my understanding as well.
I think Tom also has explained in the past that families wind up, like they move above and then they no longer qualify. And then they have a life circumstance and they move below. But then to do the paperwork and then to be approved, there's a time lag. And there can be a considerable time lag. And then those families that are on the edge, and, we have a lot in our district, they're like caught in the middle. So then they run up those fees. So part of it, I believe, is that, why we're seeing some of our balances with families.
And statistically, right, I think it says that in most districts, free and reduced lunch percentages are underrepresented by about 25%. So what's reported is about 25% lower than what actually exists.
And we just on that, or are you moving on, did you move on to the wellness, or are you putting it all together?
They are together into one.
So I had a few things as I read through it. I made a bunch of notes. I asked you some questions that you thank you for answering them, but under physical activity number 2, that physical activity during school day shall not be withheld as punishment. I'm pleased to say you say that in some cases it may happen if there's misbehavior and unsafe activity on the playground. That would be the indication, but I know in the past there were times when issues in the classroom where they weren't getting their work done on time or misbehavior, they were being told they had to stay in for recess. You assure me that that policy is being addressed and reversed and not being done?
Correct.
Good. And that the winter sports or winter time, that it's a lot of burden on them to get their snow pants on and their jacket on and their hat on, and there's a lot of time with that, and you tell me that they try to make sure that the recess time is still recess time.
Correct.
And state law allows, under State Code 118.33, Section 1E, to allow half credit of
health
of PE for participation in sports. And we just heard tonight our excellence in our cross-country team, and I can assure you, those kids are running year-round. I see them all the time, all summer long. I see the coaches making sure of them, and I mean, those guys aren't just in season, they're following WI rules, in case anyone's trying to assume that. But, so they are doing that, and for whatever reason, even though the state allows it, we don't. And interestingly, and I find it an inconsistency in our policy, there is a class called Stage Crew, which is number 172.SC in English, where kids can participate in Stage Crew for drama and get a half credit of English awarded. Now, we're talking about rigor just a little bit ago, and yet, so we award a half credit of English for that, but we don't, even though the state allows it, allow a half credit for sports participation. And I'm kind of curious as to why, and I would like to see us readdress that and change that, become more consistent with what we're doing in English. And frankly, I don't think that those kids are actually going to take less PE, a lot of those kids like PE and they'll still take it. It's just that you're awarding another credit that's allowed and reasonable, in my opinion.
Jim is right. The law does allow for students that are in sports to count that activity as a half a credit of Phi-Ed. And there are some districts that do that. Jim has made it very clear that he wants us to look at that, and Jeff and Chris and I have that on our list, and you'll hear more about that in the coming months.
No, and a while ago, we had looked into that. And I don't know if it still exists, but one of the barriers to that was if you give credit for it, it's subject to all the other rules, American Disabilities Act and so forth, that now you open it up to, everybody is allowed to do that, and you have to accommodate them at their level. I don't know if that still exists, but at the time it did. For instance, you want to be on the football team if you're in a wheelchair. Well, now, if we did that at the time, you would have to figure out a way for that person to be on the ballot. I don't know if that still exists.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out.
Anything else?
Any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the revisions to policy 8510 and policy 8511 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Will, second by Alex. Other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 14A. We have our 2025 WASB resolutions.
Okay, WASB resolutions, all of you received those
Did I?
No.
last month. And we're asked to take a look at those and to reach back out if you had any questions, clarifications, or objections. Cabinet also looked at them. The only one that Cabinet questioned was 2508, the accountability and school report card standards. We really did not support having only achievement be counted on the report cards. We felt like having all of the other, demographic information, graduation requirements, attendance, all of that be included on the report card made more sense than just being graded on achievement. And then I did receive feedback from board on possibly an objection to 2504, which is decoupling public and private school funding, and 2505, consistent standards across all Wisconsin schools. Other than that, that's the only feedback I received. So I'd like to just open it up for the board to have some discussion so that we can provide G some direction and then give him some latitude at the convention to make decisions for the board.
I had a question about 250, the first one you mentioned, 2508.
Yep.
Why can't they do both? I mean, don't you get the raw scores and then you apply all the conditions to them? I mean, why can't you just have both? It wouldn't involve any more work, would it?
Well, the achievement scores are on the current report card, but that overall score is dependent on many factors. And our position was, not all schools have the same demographics, meaning the same number of special ed students, maybe students that don't speak English, or free and reduced lunch. And if you only look at achievement, demographics between districts are so very different and sometimes dependent on
But
that
I'm
information.
not saying to use it as an evaluation tool, but to use it as a point of information. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think the danger would be that people who have their fingers on the money would start using it as a,
To me, it's about, a lot of this is about student growth. I mean, we know every single one of our students come in at a different place, and it's our job to take each one of those students from where they're at and get them to grow as much as we can each year. not all of our students are ever going to achieve at the very same level. I mean, we know that. So having a report card that judges solely on achievement concerns me a little bit.
I agree. I have disagree
Yeah.
in capital here. I mean, I truly believe we've actually been kind of moving in the other direction, recognizing the need to, I don't want to say support the whole child, but to recognize those achievement gap, focuses that we need and graduation rate stuff. And so I'm not quite sure why we would be limiting that. So I'm in disagreement with it. In particular, because charter and voucher schools aren't accountable for anything.
That would go along with the one right next to it then, the other. Oh, I guess the decoupling of public and private school funding.
So what they want to do with that one is they want to take out of the school district our requirement to raise taxes to pay for the vouchers. They would decouple it from school districts and it would come out of another state fund. Because right now, when we ask for those tax dollars, our citizens sometimes don't understand that that voucher school money is part of that. And we have to pay for those vouchers. So if they take it out of district revenue limits, then it would come from another state fund. So I actually think that that's okay to decouple.
Doesn't sound like a bad thing
No.
to me.
But there are some that do think it's a bad thing. So I think it's for you to decide as a board so that, then you can give some direction at the convention.
I also had a question about 2501. That is like, what does it mean? I don't understand. The Blue Ribbon Commission, I don't know.
So remember a few years ago,
Bannock.
Bannock Elementary School was awarded with a blue
Blue
ribbon.
ribbon.
Yep. So basically, they just made some changes to the recommendations for that award.
And this one's an amendment to existing. So it's not a new resolution that they'd be approving. It's amending their existing one to,
I don't think it's not to do with the blue ribbon.
No, it's not.
That
It's
schools
not?
get awarded.
Wait
So
a second.
No.
when
Blue
the
Ribbon
state,
Commission on School Funding.
when
Yeah.
the state wants to explore something, they'll create a, quote,
Oh.
blue ribbon commission on a topic. It's just I don't know why they call it that, but that's what they call it. So,
I'm sorry. Thank
so
you. Bill.
this is supporting the creation of a state level commission to explore school funding.
Right.
Basically, that's about it.
Isn't that what,
Thank you.
yeah, to me, that's like, aren't we doing that? Isn't that what the state
Like it
legislature and
exists.
the DPI is?
Yeah.
And like Meg said, it's just an
Amendment,
amendment. It's
yeah.
not
It's just a-
Sometimes
it's
the state
amendment to
creates
existing
specific
to-
committees.
clarify it.
Well, oh, go ahead.
I had a question with 25.06, and it wasn't as much the substance, is the three statements all seemed very different. And so I know sometimes with WASB, they'll do a paren A, a paren B, a paren C, but, as I was looking through them, one is state-funded public school 3K and full-day 4K for Wisconsin children. The next one is collaboration with other providers, which, would have relevance for us, but wouldn't for a lot of school districts in the state. And then the third one, again, is that Title I dollars. So, I mean, it's not about the substance as much as they just seem to be three different
topics.
And could be split and voted on separately by the delegates.
I also didn't understand that because 3K, from my understanding, has always been not public unless there's a need. So like my son had speech and language
Yes.
has got for 3K.
Birth to
4K,
three
right,
services.
Birth to 3 services.
Yep.
So I was like, well, why are we saying now we want them in school more? And I had a problem with, I don't want more kids, and they need to be playing and doing those types of things. And there's education being done, but I just like problem with the 3K addition to that. The 4K edition I didn't have a problem with, but the 3K edition I did have a problem with because 3K should, in my world, should not be, they should be playing and learning how just to interact with life and not necessarily in school.
I agree with you there. I personally, I see 3K as state-funded daycare
Mm-hmm.
and not all that much educational value that they can't catch up on very quickly. That kids.
So that was my one
That's my
qualification.
only area with that.
If we remove 3K, fine, whatever. But it's a 3K addition that I had a problem with. I also had a problem with 2505.
Standards.
The consistent standards, because voucher schools right now are audited 4 different times. They still have rankings on the DPI. All of that information is present. They still have to do all of those things. I don't. And moreover, I understand it is publicly funded through the voucher system, through the parental choice program. However, just as parents elect to choose private schools, parents elect to choose public schools. That's their right, and I don't think that it's the government's necessary role to control what's going on in private schools.
And that one was an amendment too.
That was
correct?
2505.
Yep.
So how do you want to do this? Like, you want to vote on each one, or do you want to say yes and vote on the ones you want to say no, or how do you want to do this?
Well, I guess, are there any that you want to vote on opposition of?
I am opposed to 2505.
I guess we all don't like 2508.
Yeah, that's probably an
We can
easier
start with
place
the
to
easy
start.
one
right?
first.
Yeah, start there.
We can do this.
Can we just strike?
As expeditiously as
Yep.
possible.
Yes.
Yep.
You want to strike 2508?
Does the
Do we
board
need to
support
vote?
striking?
I'm good with that.
Sure. Yep.
Yes.
And the addition of the 3K and the 2506. Unless, you know, what others?
Gee, did you get through all of these last year?
Yes.
Oh, you did, okay. It was the year before, I
Because
think.
I was the
No, that was a
timer.
disaster.
I made
Okay.
sure they got through. And I'm the timer again this year, so we're gonna get through all of them.
And you say 3K too. That's more kids. Do you think they're gonna give us more money? Probably not.
Probably not, and even at 4K, we get half of the allotted amount.
60%.
Well, because we provide, what, the extra 85 hours or whatever it is, 80 hours, 85, whatever.
85 hours.
Okay, because we provide the extra 85 hours, so 60%, but at 3K,
I don't know.
I don't know
Well,
either.
come
I mean, there's no mention of that here.
I know, but I just,
Intentional.
I'm government-sponsored daycare, I'm diametrically opposed.
So,
I mean, if they fund it, what's the issue?
I have a problem with government-sponsored daycare.
you know, the Waldorf school out at Amherst, kindergarten is daycare. They do not have a curriculum. It's just daycare.
Just playing.
Government-sponsored daycare. That's interesting. Okay, 2506. Do you want to vote on that? Minus, do you want to say minus the 3K? Are you
So
okay
just
with
strike
it?
3K.
Strike that, and so I'd have to get up and say, take out 3K? Somebody doesn't
If
say
the
that.
board feels comfortable with that.
Do that, G.
Yeah,
So
somebody else will.
So I disagree with Alex somewhat. I recognize the societal pressure that they are trying
To relieve. I
and
understand.
address
Mhm.
for significant numbers of families in Wisconsin who don't have the ability to have a parent in the home supporting those children in the home. So this was one where I just struggle with. For me, if we're going to have 3K, I would support 3K being publicly funded for families that need it. But But I also think that sometimes when your reach is too far, you don't wind up with anything. And so I would agree with you. I do think full day 4K is something as a school district or school board that I would want to support. And so I guess I'd rather push for the reach that's less, at least right now. So I'm not opposed to what you're saying, but I
Different
do.
rationale.
Yeah.
I'm losing track here. We're jumping back and forth. Can we just go through?
I think that this is it's this one and one more, right? So this particular 1G 2506, it sounds like that we're striking 3K. And
Well,
that's
we
enough.
should vote on that because I don't know that everybody's in agreement.
Right, so we're having the conversation, and so both Alex and Meg had recognized for different rationale that they support the striking of 3K. Anyone else?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay.
I'm okay with it too.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. So we're striking 3K.
But we're in favor of the.
We're in favor
Of the resolution, yeah.
Okay.
And then there was one more, right?
05.
05.
I think it's fair, personally. I know that voucher and private schools do not have to report the same data that public schools do. That's just a fact. So it makes sense to me, if I'm a taxpayer, that you should have accountability for your
You can
tax
get all of-
dollars are
You can
going.
get how many kids take the test. You can get what their test grades are. You can get all of the information on the dashboard, on WiseDash.
On the DPI site?
On WiseDash. You can get that. It's not a report card, but you can get the information of how many kids take the test, like the forward test. You can get that testing data.
It's on the public portal.
It's on the public portal with Wise data.
But they don't have to take the forward test.
We don't have, kids in public schools don't
Yeah,
have
we
to
don't
take
have
the.
to. It's
They have the ability to opt
optional
out.
test.
And I know I will say at St. Paul's, they actually reported that data out and they said, this is what our report card was, and this is what all the Stevens Point schools data was, and it was the same data.
And some,
We're already
and
doing that.
I would argue most of our voucher and private schools are great, but there are bad actors out there who do hide their data, who do not report what they don't have to. And that's a problem for parents if you're trying to choose where you want to send your kid, or for taxpayers if you're deciding, does this particular institution deserve our public dollars? You know, we have to report to the cent every single thing we spend. We have to report curriculum, we have to report, and it has to be free access to all parents or people in the district can ask for curriculum.
Sounds like that is already being reported.
All that data is reported. Because you have to go through the audits every year.
It's not.
That the data has to go through the audits every single year. 4 different data times. You have to go through the data.
The changes that they made, this was an amendment, they added the word reporting
Reporting.
and they struck the word and. So I can't speak to what they have to report. I don't know. I only know what we have to report, but I would venture to guess that there must be some discrepancy in the reporting requirements between public and private.
I'm also opposed to government overreach. I understand the taxpayer aspect. As a taxpayer, I respect that. But as, you know, as someone who went to Pacelli and such, I also understand that parents know what they're.
Yeah, okay, we can take a vote, or, I mean, I don't know who feels strongly about this.
I think it's a minor amendment to an existing resolution. I mean, I think it's more a clarification than it is an expansion, so I guess I would leave it. I mean, for me, if it was a whole new cloth, then I think we'd be having a different conversation, but it's just a minor
Amendment.
to an existing substantive
And were you gonna say-
resolution.
No, not that
I'm still opposed. I just want to note it.
That's fair.
On the record.
On the record,
And
I am opposed.
I don't know if we need to take, I mean, do with it what you will, so Alex is opposed.
Anybody else opposed?
Jim.
Okay,
Jim and
2.
Alex. Yep.
Jim and Alex.
Everybody else is okay with it? So then I would vote yes when it comes up. Okay.
Are there any others in here
that we are opposed to? I think those were the only ones that you mentioned. So the only one that's a substantive one, and I just want to make sure that we're recognizing it, and it's already happening in the state, but 2502 is, again, it's another existing, but it makes a significant change. So the previous one required a bachelor's degree and qualified to be in a classroom as demonstrated by appropriate experience, knowledge, and skills in the subject or content area and rigorous training in pedagogy, assessment, and classroom management. The way it's been changed with that "or" is having a bachelor's degrees and that, or not having a bachelor's degree and having that.
Private schools are required to have a bachelor's.
Well, and so I'm just saying that to me is a substantive change. I believe there may be some areas where we're already doing that in tech ed potentially.
So some
that have been
fields,
been specialized, pulled out by the legislature.
Experience-based
But
licensing.
this was the first one I saw that really is potentially eliminating the requirement for a bachelor's degree, generally speaking, for public education. So that one just raises
Well, I've had some student
concern
teachers that
for me.
that were on the experience-based licensure program, and they all had degrees. I've never run into anybody who didn't have a degree.
And so to me, that just raised kind of a bit of a red flag for me. I do believe, at least right now, my beliefs are if you're going to be teaching in a classroom, unless it's a specific situation that's been called out through the legislature, that teachers should have bachelor's
Didn't we
degrees.
hire a guy that we kind of trained in tech ed, and didn't he, the auto guy,
Automotive. And
didn't he get a
that's
4-year degree
allowed.
eventually?
That's one of the carve-outs.
I don't know if he did or he didn't, but I think what this would do is allow the legislature to, if there's areas that become hard to fill positions, they would allow us to do more of the experience-based licensure.
That's right, I don't have a big problem with that, because a lot of that came about, I think there were some schools around the Milwaukee area that were having a really hard time getting any teachers at all, yet they had paras there who had been there a long
Correct.
time, and it was easy to see what was going on, and that was multiple years of basically being a student teacher and acting in that way, and I would argue that the most important part of the education training to get your bachelor's and become a teacher is the student teaching. And they're not doing just one semester of it like most are doing. They're doing 3 years of it. And it gives that, and I think some of there was like back and forth, but some of that was a district recognizing someone. It actually required a principal and a superintendent to say, yep, this person is qualified and good at what they're doing. And they still had to do multiple years of in-person, basically an apprenticeship.
Yep.
I think it's a call, I know Dennis likes to use that word a bit, elitist, to think that that person doesn't have the ability to be a quality teacher. And I think part of the initial one was their licensure would stay in that district. So I think that got struck at the legislative level, but there was like, I think it was Brown Deere, and I may get confused on that, was like, they wanted someone to go through that program, allow them to teach there then, and be an employee there with a teaching license, but they were stuck in Brown Deere. It wasn't recognized
In another district.
They couldn't go to another district.
Yeah.
And I, we have a bit of a protectionist issue with some of that. I think there's, in general, the regulation of that becomes a burden in too many cases, and not just education, many places.
Sure.
But I have absolutely no problem with that change.
And so, Jim, you bring up a good choice. It says in subject or content areas where there is a shortage of licensed teachers. So, I mean, they're qualifying the shortage of licensed teachers.
That's going to be every area shortly.
Right,
Yeah.
there would be districts that would say it's every area.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's, yeah, it's
Well, you start the slippery slope.
a little
Where are
bit.
you gonna stop? And I do have a problem with it. It's, do you find a way to meet the standard, or do you lower the standard? And to me, that's lowering the standard. And,
Once again, private schools are still mandated to have
This is a
bachelor's degrees.
This is a alternative way to address the real problem, which is that our staff, teachers in general, don't get paid enough, and that the job is really hard. And why would you go into teaching and make 38, when you can go into a different profession and make 90 or six figures graduating, right? So like, why would you do that? And so this almost is abdicating our responsibility to properly attract teachers with a proper career that is attractive to well-educated people. So yeah, I think I'm with Meg on that. Like, this is the wrong way to address that problem. I
so,
think.
To facilitate the moving on of the vote, would you like me to vote yes on this? I don't like the word "or," but I'm interested in what the.
I would say, I don't like the word "or" either.
That's the only change.
Right.
That's the only change. So it's really striking it.
So it's striking it and voting no.
Voting no unless they change that wordage.
Well, that's the
Well, then
amendment
it would
that they're
just be
making. Yeah,
skipped.
so that
So
was,
it's either
yeah.
we support this or we don't.
I am not in
Yeah.
support.
I don't want to get up and, like, we had it the one year where
Wordsmith.
everybody's changing one word or another.
So if you just strike it, it stays as is, and there's no or option.
I just think it's a
It's
big.
a hard- it's a hard one. It's a hard one.
It's already current law.
The
They can already do this.
In some
why-
areas, yes.
So why, it feels like a moot point because we're already doing it. in
These
some
are
areas.
just positions that WASB wants to support.
Well, so the state legislature has carved out some very limited areas where they're pretty much statewide. There are shortages, right? And there may be that movement, but to me, this is like.
This is opening up for
Slippery
math,
slope.
math
It's
teachers.
just
English
opening the floodgates.
So are you
Not dealing with the specific issues.
Yeah. So are you in support of striking that, the majority of the
Yes.
board? Okay.
I am.
I am.
Sounds like.
Jim is not?
Jim is not.
Okay. Alex is not?
It's already in law.
Okay.
Well, Catholic schools require it, so you should probably require public schools too.
Well, then it should be a universal that all schools
Right.
should do it then.
Yep.
And then,
Any others that we need to give G feedback on?
Okay, and no, all right, we will move on. Thank you, G, for being our WASB rep. Oh, we gotta take action, so. We're moved to approve the 25 WASB resolutions with the changes,
Feedback provided.
the feedback provided, and authorize our official delegate, G Pope, to vote on behalf of the full board.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, Will. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, G. Thank you, Meg, for timing. Thank you, G, for serving. Sorry.
But you understand, things get changed around. So I have to use my little brain.
Yep.
And I'll be in the room monitoring.
to watch. Yeah.
And she's gonna.
Meg will help you
she's-
remember.
She's gonna time box all of that, so make sure.
Sit up straight. Hit that button.
That's not what we said.
All right, so now we will move on to agenda item 14B. We have our budget evaluation process with Chris Nyman.
Apologize. I thought in my mind this agenda was before the last agenda item. So
Well, you got up and so I'm
I know.
like, did I skip?
no, you didn't. It was me thinking I was in a different spot.
You're so excited to talk about
That's right.
budget
So eager to
evaluation.
talk about budget and program eval, right? I wanted to provide a brief overview here for the board and just talk a little bit about some of the work that's happening in program evaluation. In February, I'm hopeful that we'll have some results and some data to be able to share based on the course sequencing study that's being done for both ELA and math from Hanover. But as a reminder to ground us back in the data we consistently report back, 48 of the programs have been reviewed. Again, there are 14 of them that simultaneously, as that work is happening with Hanover, we continue to further analyze those 14 programs that we believe there are some efficiencies that exist within. We'll continue to discuss what potential changes or efficiencies might exist with identified stakeholders, and that includes teachers at this point, as well as administrators. And then we'll obviously maintain analysis of current expenditures. In terms of positions that we've reviewed up to this point, it's 374 total. 353 of those have been categorized as is, and no change on the 2 dots to the right of the screen. We've maintained 10 positions that are still considered frozen and 11 positions that are eliminated. As a reminder, we talked last month about the benchmarking academic requirements that was done with peer districts, and there's the list of peer districts that we analyzed when we looked both regionally and then beyond our region to say in this process of doing this program review, we want to ensure that first and foremost, our graduation requirements are in line with what other peers expect. And we've identified and determined that indeed we are, so there's no significant change needed there. But we are now looking at some of the work that John alluded to earlier and having done with the ELA department in terms of looking at course sequence. And some of the questions that we'll look for answers for as part of the course sequencing studies that are being done. We'll use the past 6 years of student data to create an interactive dashboard that'll visualize student progression through our current course pathways. That'll be done both for ELA or math. Again, what we're trying to learn here is how readily are those wide variety of options that we have available within both ELA and math being accessed? And to what degree are students accessing the highest level courses that we have available in both ELA and math? So that would be AP courses or courses that are considered or categorized as advanced. And do we see a particular demographic of students that are accessing those highest level courses more consistently than others? And if that is the case, do we gather some efficiencies within our programming by limiting the number of options, which might be the direction we move, but also if we think about developing more defined pathways as part of a profile of a graduate development, could we market differently some of those higher level courses to different demographics that are potentially underrepresented in our current course sequence pathways that we have defined? So this dashboard that will be created for ELA and math will also examine the demographic characteristic of students following those pathways, and it'll help signal potential under or overrepresentation. So that's data that I'm very eager to see based on what we've shared with the team up to this point. So again, here just highlights some of the work that Hanover's doing around ELA and math. So looking at which advanced course sequences do high school students typically complete? In other words, what pathway do most students that enter our senior high school work through? How do advanced course sequences and individual course enrollments vary based on demographics? And how do high school students' academic outcomes, specifically students post-secondary enrollment, differ for students who complete different course sequences? In other words, if I take all of the lowest level courses, am I inclined to enroll in a 2-year tech school or a 4-year university? And if I'm enrolling in the highest level classes, is my pathway typically targeted toward a 4-year university or a 4-year post-secondary experience? And then what are the academic trends based on different course sequences? In other words, what do we see in terms of grades that students attain if they follow a particular pathway that we've defined? The project goals are to display the typical course sequences and then also to allow us to be able to look at those 2 content areas separately, to be able to look at both ELA and math separately. And those interactive dashboards will be available for us to review here as a board. There's some complexities that exist within the data that they're going to share with us. So I may, at our February or March board meeting, ask a member of the Hanover team to join our discussion to walk us through some of the information, because the dashboard that they've shared with me as an example is quite complex just because of the number of courses that we have available. We've tried to categorize them into or classify them into really say like 5 umbrellas in ELA, 5 umbrellas in math, and we have a lot of courses that sort of fit but don't quite fit. So I want to ensure that the data that we're getting and the course sequences that we're reporting out on are valid in terms of the decisions that we use or that we make based on the information. Currently, as that project is being completed, we're also working on, this was intended to be the next stage of the process. So let's get some feedback from our staff, from our students, and from our families about what level of value we place on the number of offerings that we have available for students, both in ELA and math. So I'm currently finalizing those survey questions that we'll share with students, families, and staff, and that will be completed before the end of the year. And we also have some questions embedded in the survey that allow students and parents to be able to comment on the level of rigor that they believe exists within the course pathway that their student has experienced in our senior high school. So that is the work that has not begun yet, but we are in the process of finalizing that survey at this point in time. And that is an update on the work that's happening around program and budget evaluation. But at this point, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that the board may have.
Questions, comments?
I'm just wondering if it would be helpful, if you're taking a look at 14, that you're kind of thinking about potentially finding efficiencies, if that might be helpful for the board at least to know what they are, just in case we
Those
get
14
a
programs?
call. I'm just thinking we might be receiving some calls based on conversation. That might be helpful.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yep, we can definitely provide that. I can even include that next month.
Yep, awesome. Any other questions or comments for Chris? Okay, Chris, thank you so much.
It's the beauty of being at the end of the agenda in a long meeting. He has a lot of-
With the riveting budget evaluation topic.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, we have 14C, future meetings, dates, and times. Our next board meeting is on February 10th, 2025. We have one on March 10th and also one on April 14th. Reminder to everyone, committee meetings meet once a month. Ed Services, the first Monday at 5:30. Bless you.
Thank you.
Business Services and HR, the first Monday of the month at 6:30. Moving on to agenda item 15A, enter into closed session. I need a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee, specifically administrator contracts, including the superintendent.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion made by Alex, second by Will. All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bushman.
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski.
Yes.
Mr. Pope.
Yes.
Ms. Portson.
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes.
Mr. Shader.
Aye.
Mr. Summers.
Yes.
Mr. Leapat.
Yes.